All right, we're going to call to order the City of Sherwood Planning Commission meeting for June 5th, 2018. Roll call.
Chair Simpson.
Here.
Commissioner Cottle.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kai.
Here.
Commissioner Scott.
Here.
Vice Chair Flores.
Here.
Commissioner Holm.
Here.
Commissioner Metzinger. Absent.
Thank you very much. I would like to welcome our new commissioners, Lori Holm and Mark Cottle. Welcome to a very big packet. You're starting out in an opportunity to really start lifting the weights around here. All right, we have this evening a consent agenda that consists of the April 10th and the April 24th Planning Commission meeting minutes and a work session minutes. Does everybody have an opportunity to review those? All right, I do have two typos that I'll turn into staff at the end of the meeting. They're just name typo corrections. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Sure. I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passed. Approved. All right. Council liaison announcements.
In the interest of time, I will keep this brief. I'd also like to welcome Commissioners Holm and Cottle. Thank you guys for volunteering. As always, it's always great to see some qualified people come up here and help serve the community. Thank you for that. Obviously, everybody knows Cruise in Sherwood is this Saturday. No rain. I do want to call out, we've got two folks, and thank you for everybody actually attending tonight. It's a great turnout here tonight at the Planning Commission. I want to call out two people in the back here, Brock and Nash. They're here to learn more about city government. They were at our city council meeting earlier this evening where we welcomed the new Maid Marian Court. It was a real quick, brief city council meeting, not a lot of governmenting going on there. So I think they decided to stick around and see how the Planning Commission works. So thanks guys for showing up. It's great talking to you. They interviewed a couple of us on council today for an assignment, some great questions. Thanks, and thanks to everyone else for showing up tonight. It's great to see you. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Staff announcements.
So as you know, the city kicked off our comprehensive plan visioning project, and I want to let all of you know that you can go to sherwood2040.org. It is the new project website, and there you can learn about the project and take our community survey for our first phase of this visioning process. Yes, Sherwood2040.org.
20 years beyond the last time I did this.
That's right. Staff, we've been out with a lot of community volunteers in the community, talking to folks about, what they like about Sherwood, what they want to see in, 20 years from now. We're going to be at a lot of different community events over the summer. This weekend we'll be at Cruisin' from 9 to 3, taking community input. And the next Comprehensive Plan Community Advisory Committee meeting will be on June 27th at 6:30 right here in this room. And we are going to be talking about the city's economic opportunities analysis and what this analysis is and why we have it.
Excellent.
Erica, did you want to also mention, my understanding is that the council is going to be taking a tour of the water treatment plant in Wilsonville, and Joe Gall, the city manager, indicated that we wanted to invite planning commissioners as well. And so we'll probably send an email out separately just to see if you prefer an evening tour or a Saturday tour, if you're interested at all, just so you can see that. But also in the future you will be having, or we expect that you will be having, a conditional use / site plan application in the Tonkin employment area. So it might be helpful for you just to get a little bit more familiarity with what this type of thing looks like. So.
All right, thank you very much. No other announcements? All right. Next are community comments, and community comments are limited to those items not on the agenda. And I have no blue cards from anybody indicating that they want to make comments not related to the item already on the agenda. And no one is leaping up to come forth, so we will move on to new business. And new business is our public hearing for this evening, and I need to read this disclosure statement. The public hearing on SP 1803, CUP 1802, and VAR 1801 Sherwood High School is called to order. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present the staff report, 15 minutes, questions by the hearing body for staff. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and time will be limited as follows. Applicant will have 30 minutes that will be split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application will have 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application will have 4 minutes each. Then there will be rebuttal from the applicant, which is the remainder of the 30 minutes. We will then close the public hearing, and no other comments will be heard from the public or the applicant. There will be final comments by staff, and then questions of staff, if any, by the commission, then discussion by the commission. A decision may be made by the Planning Commission at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you receive. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the blue testimony forms and submit it to the Planning Commission Secretary. The chair will recognize people who wish to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the chair. When you come forward, please make sure the green light is on the microphone and state your name and address for the record. In reaching a decision on the application, the Commission must consider whether the application meets the relevant approval criteria in the city's land use regulations. Those criteria are identified in the staff report. There are 2 copies of the staff report available in the room this evening. The testimony and evidence must address these criteria or other criteria you believe to apply to the decision. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the Commission, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Also, failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding proposed conditions of approval, again with enough detail to allow the Commission to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. And the Planning Commission is the final hearing body for this application tonight. If there is an appeal, it'll be appealed to the City Council. At this time, I would like to ask members of the Commission to disclose ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest, indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing this evening.
I was a member of the Community Design Review Committee for the high school project. I don't believe that provides me with any bias, and I do intend to participate.
Thank you.
I've been by the site a million times and read an article in the Gazette all about this, and I don't think that precludes me. And I voted on this issue when it came before this. Yeah.
All right. I would also like to disclose that prior to the last City Council meeting, Commissioner Griffin approached me regarding the roundabout and had indicated that he'd expressed a concern regarding the sidewalk and the crossings and the safe routes to school. And while that is information that is available to everybody, he brought forth the concern, and I wanted to say that it does not affect my ability to participate without bias this evening, and I do plan to participate. Anybody else? Does any member of the audience wish to challenge any planning commissioner member's ability to participate this evening? Hearing none, we will now have the staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Fellow Commissioners, Matt Street presenting agenda item 6A for staff. The project is located westerly of Elbert Road and Highway 99 on the west side of the city in the newly incorporated area. The project consists of 4 parcels totaling 82 acres. Hear me okay?
Sorry, we were discussing this, and other people may be discussing this as well, especially those at home. The projector is not working. The audience can see the PowerPoint presentation on the screen in front of them. in the room. The commissioners can see it on the screens right in front of them, so it's really just us that are not seeing it, but the Planning Commission is seeing the presentation, even though the projector isn't projecting.
The project site currently has zoning of institutional and public. Now, each time we've come before the commission with different pieces of the high school, we've tried to show the larger picture and put all the different pieces together so you can see where this particular project fits into this. It's particularly pertinent with two new planning commissioners here tonight. So let me walk through those real quickly here. The very first step was the expansion of the urban growth boundary around the outside of the city, and that happened via Metro in mid-2017. The second step was to apply comprehensive plan land use to the site and policies, to pre-apply zoning, and to have a Title 11 Metro concept plan applied to the property. And that happened already in late 2017. The third step was the annexation to actually bring the project into the city. At that point, zoning was actually applied to the property, and that happened in early 2018, earlier this year. And the last step is and has always been, the site plan and a conditional use permit for the project. When the applicant came forward with the applications, they added a variance to that, but it's essentially what we have before us tonight. So let's dig in a little bit more with the first item. The applicant is requesting a site plan that is proposing a 342,000 square foot high school, 4 different parking lots on the site, as shown on the slide in front of you here, a stadium, sports fields, and various outbuildings. And it's important, especially with 2 new planning commissioners, to go over this point. The school itself is building the core facilities for a total capacity of 2,400 students. That means the libraries, the rec rooms, the sports fields, all for 2,400 students with the potential of growth in the future. However, the classrooms themselves are only designed to accommodate 2,000 students. And so the application before you tonight does have a maximum capacity of 2,000 students. In the event that they want to expand the school in the future, they will have to come back and revise the entitlement in order to gain capacity for the extra 400. But you might read in some of the documentation that some of the core facilities were designed for more than that, and so we wanted to explain that real quickly. The conditional use permit tonight is alarmingly straightforward. It's required in the zone for a high school use. The variance is twofold here tonight. The applicant is proposing a Class B variance for a height and a Class A variance for bike parking. Specifically for the height, you can see on this slide here that one of the structures it exceeds the 50-foot height limit for the institutional and public zone by 3 feet. And we'll talk more about these variances in a moment. This isn't the right slide. I apologize. I'm experiencing a small technical difficulty. I may have, yes, I grabbed the wrong presentation. Want me to run upstairs and grab the next one, or the correct one? Okay. Sorry about that. Did you want to start with the applicant's presentation then?
No, we'll
I'll be right
wait.
back.
Sorry. We can pause for a moment.
early tonight, by the way. No nonsense, nonsense. Sorry about that. The other presentation was for the annexation. Could have kept going, but we've already had it annexed. So. All right. So, to get back on track, I apologize for that. The required criteria tonight can be basically divided into 4 different categories. We have the site plan criterion, the conditional use permit, the variance, and then some of the standards that apply to the project. I'm not planning on going through each one of those individually tonight. I'm just going to hit the highlights of the ones that are pertinent for discussion. Starting with the site plan, the code requires that adequate services be provided and are available. Those include water, sanitary, storm, public safety. Those were all addressed in the Title 11 Metro Concept Plan that was before the Commission previously. This project is implementing that plan, and therefore they're already consistent with those provisions. The code requires that natural features on the site be protected. This site was previously a Christmas tree farm, so there aren't a lot of natural features on the site to be protected. However, there are 8 identified wetlands on the property, and the applicant has proposed to fill all 8 of those, and we have added appropriate conditions of approval to assure compliance with that, basically meaning they have to get all the required state permits in order to do that. The code requires that a transportation impact analysis be provided for the project. The applicant has provided one of those, and that was in the packet that was distributed to the Commission previously. All the proposed mitigation measures from that transportation study have been included in the project as conditions of approval. The code requires that specific design features be used, or it allows the applicant to come forward using the Planning Commission as a design review board, and that's exactly what the applicant is intending to do. Rather than subscribe to a laundry list of items that are prescriptive from our ordinance, they've elected to come before you with the design features, so those are going to be to the satisfaction of the Commission here tonight. The conditional use criterion includes the same requirement that services be available, so we've already addressed that. It requires that the zoning standards be complied with. In this case, the zoning standards for the institutional and public zone are all adhered to for this particular project. The code requires that the project meet a need for the community and that they meet the requirements of the comprehensive plan. Again, because this project came in before, just a few months ago, with comprehensive plan changes and a Title 11 concept plan, those changes in the comprehensive plan were specifically tailored for this high school. And so now the project coming in, naturally, meets those requirements from the comprehensive plan. The code also requires that there be no adverse impacts to the surrounding community. In this case, that's generally traffic. With mitigation from the transportation impact analysis and through the basic design of the school, this criterion is met. Moving on to the variance, the Class A and Class B variances have different criteria. So we'll start with the Class B variance. A Class B variance must be based on an issue brought on by the lot, by the property itself. In this case, the Class B variance is for the height. And based on the topography of the site, the applicant has designed a structure that is designed to basically hug the site and contour to the land. That's a requirement that comes from a lot of other sections of the code. And so then breaking that by 3 feet, we find that's consistent and meets the required criteria because it's based on the property itself. The code also requires, however, that the variance be for 3 or fewer parcels. And as was previously pointed out, this project has 4 parcels. The applicant was previously entertaining the idea of merging all these parcels into one, so we've added a condition of approval here that they have to do that in order to meet this criteria. The code also requires that the variance have minimal impacts. That's the actual item that has been varied have minimal impacts. And in this case, the specific place where the height breaks the 50-foot height limit is located in the middle of the project, so there won't be any adverse impacts to anybody surrounding the project site based on that variance. The Class A variance is requesting a 70% reduction in the required bike parking. Staff at this point does not support the reduction in the bike parking because the proposed change can't meet the required criteria. We've added conditions of approval that require all required 268 bike spaces, including the 80 covered bike spaces, to be added to the plan to assure that it's consistent with this provision of the code. More specifically, the code requires that the variance not be detrimental to the purposes of the code, and in staff's interpretation of this, the purpose of the bike code section is to make sure that you have other options besides just cars. Reducing the amount of bike spaces obviously reduces the intent of that section of the code because there's less bike spaces to be had. So we feel it is detrimental to the purposes of the code. Additionally, the variance must be based on a hardship brought on by the lot or brought on by the property or the land, topography, a stream going through the middle, rock outcroppings, something like that. Basically, it's designed as a feature of the land that is creating the problem. In this case, the applicant has indicated that the location of the site is the hardship, and the location, according to staff's interpretation, isn't necessarily a feature of the land and therefore can't be used to satisfy the criteria for a variance. The narrative additionally argues that primarily the code requirement is excessive, and staff feels that if the code is excessive in that realm, which it may be, the appropriate way to address that would be to fix the code. You can't address that through a variance because the variance is rooted in the land itself, and the discrepancy or the excessive requirements of our ordinance don't come from the land, that's coming from the ordinance, and therefore it can't meet this criteria. Last, the circumstances requiring the variance cannot be self-imposed. In this case, the applicant has selected the property, and so we feel that this criteria can't be met. The code requires that all the standards be met. I didn't want to go through each one of those standards today, so I'm trying to highlight the ones that I think are pertinent for discussion here tonight. Section 1696030 requires that any parking lot over 50 spaces have 2 access points. In this case, all the parking lots met that requirement except one, the one highlighted on your screen here in purple. That's the staff parking lot. Now, the applicants have interpreted this section of the ordinance differently from staff. The applicants have interpreted that the project, if it has more than 50 parking spaces, has to have more than one point of access. And in that case, it meets the requirement in spades because there are several points of access to the project site. Staff has interpreted this a little bit differently, and staff has interpreted it to mean that each parking lot over 50 spaces requires 2 points of access. If that's the case, the staff parking lot only features 1 point of access. So what we have done to address this is we've added a condition of approval saying that that parking lot has to be redesigned to include a secondary point of access when they come in for the final site plan. Now, again, if the Planning Commission should elect to agree with the applicant's point of view, we can simply drop the condition of approval and then that criteria is met. Section 1610620 includes a litany of transportation standards and requirements. We're not going to go through all those individually tonight because, again, the transportation impact analysis addressed all those standards in spades, and the applicant's team has an entire presentation that's addressing transportation and traffic. So we're not going to double up on their efforts here tonight. But I do want to note that in staff's opinion, this project does meet all of those standards and all of those criteria. Last, the code requires street trees, and this project is actually being constructed through a fairly complicated and elaborate structure of intergovernmental agreements, and the applicants will be building some streets, the county will be building other streets, the city might be doing some of the improvements also. And so we wanted to clarify in a condition of approval that it's still the applicant's responsibility to ensure that all the street trees that are required are built before the project is actually open, regardless of who's going to build them or how they're going to go in. So with that, staff recommends approval of the project shy of the variance, which we discussed previously, subject to the conditions of approval. And before I leave my presentation, we handed out a memo to the Planning Commission, and there are extra copies for any member of the audience that would like one at the back of the room. And we've continued to work with the applicant after the release of the staff report to address some of their concerns regarding the timing of some of these conditions of approval, very specifically related to grading. And so we're proposing some clarifications and some small modifications to a number of different conditions of approval here tonight in order to help them address some of those timing needs. Staff can go through these one by one if you like. We distributed this previously to the commission, so we'd hope that you had a chance to go through them Also included in this memo is 2 additional letters, one from DKS with some comments on the traffic study, and another one from Clean Water Services, where they basically tried to help also and broke up their requirements into different phases so the applicant wouldn't be as impacted by the timing of the requirements from Clean Water Services. So with that, that concludes staff's presentation. It should be in the back. No, that came in much later. We have extras in case you need it.
Does anybody have any questions of Matt before we move to the applicant?
I do. I'm a little curious of why the bicycle variance, you suggest that the location's not part of the characteristics of the project, because it seems to me like bicycles is a transportation issue, right? I mean, that's what you said. And so all these improvements that we're making these folks do is based upon location, right?
Well, generally a variance is driven by a criteria of the land, something on the land that's driving that. In this case, there's nothing on the property that's driving the need for the variance. Regardless of where they put the school, they would want to use the variance anywhere the school was. So it's not. Really
I don't think you can. I don't think you can jump to that, because it seems to me like we're putting this on the rural end of Sherwood, right? So there is no real possibility of bike usage for one end of it, because it's all coming down the hill, and it's the rural area. On the other end of it, we're not providing, for some reason, the city of Sherwood hasn't seen fit to provide an overpass, because walking across or riding your bike across 99 isn't a very safe way of getting there either. And so it seems that the location of this is a characteristics of the plat, because of the very because of the location. For example, Snyder Park, its location is part of the characteristics of the park, where you put the driveway. In fact, in this, you require them to put the driveway contingent to other driveways that come out. There just doesn't happen to be any. And so it seems like on the one hand, you're saying location is part of the characteristics. On the other hand, you're saying, no, it's not. So that's one concern. And the other one is on that parking lot that doesn't have doesn't our code potentially conflict with the county then? Because often on county roads, they won't allow, no matter how big you are, ingress and egress twice. They'll allow it once, but not twice. We've had a lot of projects here in town that says you can only have one, then you have to have a side street.
Sure, I can speak to that.
And then also, won't that make a site problem, because we have we have spacing standards. We have one parking lot here. We have another driveway at the very other end of it, and I'm trying to figure out.
Staff thought that there could be some kind of way they could connect internally to the project to add a second point of access. That second point of access doesn't have to be to a street. For example, these parking lots up here connect internally. This parking lot could connect through here to the bus area. It could connect through here to the second driveway on this side.
And the whole point of the bus access is not to have cars on it.
Sure.
That's the whole point of that. But it could come in onto the other one. How big of a barrier is between the two parking lots? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know.
Would an emergency ingress and egress be allowed? Because I assume you want two, so emergency vehicles can cut across if there's a need for that in case one's blocked.
Sure. Well, the code doesn't get that specific. It just says that if you're over 50 spaces, 2 points of access are required. And that's all it says.
Okay.
So we were just putting that burden back on the applicant to have to design how they would meet that.
Okay.
So potentially they could come in and maybe just clarify that on the condition that the secondary ingress and egress on the staff parking lot could be limited to an emergency access using the bus turnaround, and that would be acceptable if the condition would allow that.
I would think so.
Okay. Those are just the 2 quick points I had.
And if I may, on the variance and the location, just as a reminder, this is now surrounded by urban reserve, and so it certainly is not anticipated that over the life of Sherwood that it will always be rural, and that there will likely be over time neighborhoods and developments around it. So
well, that sort of goes to the other issue is you keep referring to the West Side comprehensive plan, but didn't the city council just say we don't want to do that?
No. There's the Sherwood West preliminary concept plan that is, it exists, it's valid. What council recently said they didn't want to proceed with is asking Metro to add a portion of that into the urban growth boundary in this current round.
But by the end result is, we're not going to implement our plan, at least in the next 3 or 4 years, because we don't want any of that land to come into Sherwood.
That is correct.
Okay.
Within the next 3 to 6 years, that is correct,
Okay.
but it's not anticipated that it would never come in.
Okay.
Is there any way to get some air? I'm hot. I don't know about the rest of you.
I closed the door. So I have one question on the memo that was handed out, and maybe I should read that. So there is on page 3, letter E, 3 is here, but there's no strikeouts and there's no red writing. So I don't know if it was just copied inadvertently or if it was if there's something missing off of that. You can look at it while the applicant talks, but there's just no
Changes.
there's no changes, so I didn't know what I was missing there. Does anybody have any questions of staff before we call the applicant up?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just have one quick question. So your proposed condition of approval for the variance on the bike issue, you're recommending 201 spaces?
263, I believe.
Okay. Well, plus the 67 long-term.
Right.
And then the 201 short-term.
Correct.
So I guess
Correct.
okay, to go to the 268 total that is necessary.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. I just wanted clarification.
What's a long-term
Covered, weatherproof.
versus a short-term?
Covered in weather.
Oregonians aren't used to
What's
the rain.
considered long-term when bike parking?
I think it says over 2 hours being there or something.
I think the intent of the code is to make sure that long-term parking is there for people who work. So they're going to be there 8-10 hours a day, as opposed to people who are coming up and frequenting a business that may be there for half an hour or 20 minutes. And so the long-term bike parking is supposed to be weather protected in some way, either indoors or have a porch over it.
So our code doesn't really have an application for a school because presumptively, now some kids don't go all day, but presumptively, everybody's going to be long-term because they're going to show up in the morning and they're not going to get out until the afternoon.
Good point.
There you go.
So is there any reason why staff wouldn't come in the middle and have some sort of more than obviously what the applicant is asking for, but less than what the code requires?
Well, when the code requires a certain amount, it's the obligation of staff to enforce what the code says. We don't have the flexibility of accepting anything less.
Okay.
But
And that's why the applicant applied for the variance. But
Right.
even the variance, we feel the findings can't be made at all, and so we're
Understood.
requiring
Okay.
a full measure.
Okay.
that's potentially the discretion of the commission.
Okay.
But
And
you,
just to clarify
but that has
So-
to be
right.
based on something within the code. We
Within-
can't just
right.
go willy-nilly changing.
You can find something contrary to what staff recommends that you find, but you don't have the discretion to provide wiggle room.
Can't just say we
Gotcha.
like it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But still have to meet the criteria either way.
We have to meet the criteria, but if the applicant brings forth evidence that says we do meet the criteria based on this information, then we can weigh the two sides of the argument to determine who
Okay.
gets the variance or not.
But you're right, that may be a code fix that we should look at.
Without a doubt.
All right. Any other questions of the applicant? Then I think we will move on to the applicant, which I have one blue card from Brad Kilby.
Good evening, Chair Simpson, Commissioners. My name is Heather Cordy. I have the distinct honor of serving as the Sherwood School District Superintendent, and I have the opportunity this evening to present to you our team. Brad Kilby with HHPR, Scott Mansur with DKS, and Karina Ruiz, Principal with Brick Architects.
Thank you, Commissioners. Brad Kilby, 205 Southeast Spokane, Suite 200, Portland, Oregon 97202. So tonight our presentation is going to be somewhat broken up, so I'll just give you the background of this. We've been working on this for about 2 years now, actively working on it. I'd say I was here when the Sherwood West Preliminary Concept Plan was passed, and the school district did participate. They identified an area in this location generally, and then one up in the north portion of the location. Through an extensive public process, they looked at lands that are existing within the community, and then the lands that were in Sherwood West, and they landed on locating the high school in this location based on community programming needs that were identified through that process, and that land was available. We went through Metro to expand the urban growth boundary. That was called a major amendment. Went through Metro and was passed last August. After that, we had to come back and revisit the Sherwood West Preliminary Concept Plan and do a refinement plan for the area, Title 11 Concept Plan. That was passed by the council in December and January. And then the annexation was recently passed just 2 months ago. And so now before you today is the land use application and public hearings. I'm going to turn it over to Karina, just talk briefly about how we got to where we are today.
Thank you. Karina Ruiz, Principal Brick Architecture, 1233 Northwest Northrop, Suite 100, Portland, Oregon 97209. So in terms of the public involvement process, as Brad spoke earlier, this is a process that has been, we've been engaged in for almost 2 years now, both prior to bond passage and then since the bond passed in November of 2016, and really started talking about the high school project as it's envisioned today in early 2017. The slide you see in front of you is just a portion of the meetings that we've had in terms of public involvement. You can see series of meetings that we've had with community at large, work sessions that we've held with the Planning Commission and the City Council about the project. And really the point of this slide is to talk about the fact that we believe strongly that the design that is going to be presented to you tonight, both in terms of the site and in terms of the building, is not indicative of the design of one architect or a landscape architect, but rather it's a reflection of the input that we've gotten from the entire community, district community, and the community at large. It has been a robust conversation that we've had with the community. I often joke that this is a little high school associated with a big traffic project. So the community has obviously has weighed in on a number of issues that we've talked about, and we've tried our very best to incorporate those as much as we can.
So real quickly, on your screen it shows the 4 parcels that we're proposing to develop, and yes, we do intend to consolidate those parcels over time, so it would be a single lot. We had to get some purchase and sale agreements out of the way before we could begin that process, but it is in fact one of our intents. So the next part of the presentation will be Karina talking about the operational components of the application along with the height variance, and then we'll move into traffic with Scott at DKS, and then I want to come back and wrap up with some of the conditions. And I'll just add to that we have worked with staff for 2 years now. It was shortly after I left that they started participating with the staff outside of that Sherwood West concept plan area, and we've asked a lot of staff, and they have went over and above what we've done, what we've asked them to do. And simply the reason that we've asked them to bend over and the reason that we've asked them to get things done is because this school has to be opened by a certain date. Construction, that means there's a lot of projects that have to be done. We'll talk about in the transportation. These are things that have to be designed, constructed, and completed before the school opens. So we're on a real time crunch. And then, as you know, the cost of materials continues to go up in today's market, so we have to capitalize on that. So any delay that we get through this process ends up costing the district and, in fact, in turn, the community money, because it's bond money that we're using to develop this property. It's not like the school district is a developer coming in to make money off of a project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Karina.
Thank you, Brad. So I want to start with the high school site plan. Essentially, one of the biggest features, and Matt spoke about it earlier, is the incredible grade difference that there is on the site. So as you can see in the site plan in front of you, we have Haiti Road to the north, Elwart Road to our east, and Kruger Road to the south. And from the corner of Haiti and Elwart, we are at about 285 feet above sea level, and we rise to a little over 360 feet in the southwest corner. So there's a significant amount of grade, and as you'll see as we walk through the site design, we've really tried our hardest to ensure that we're trying to have the building hug that site as much as possible. The other elements that you see in front of you, as Matt also pointed out, we do have 4 parking spaces. Brad will talk about, or 4 parking lots. As Brad will talk about, we do interpret the code that it essentially is asking us to look at basically on-site circulation. It never says specifically that each driveway has to have that, and so we have a number of on-site access points to the parking lots on our site. Essentially, the statement that you made, Commissioner Cottle, is exactly right. The core tenet of our site development in terms of on-site circulation is to separate bus circulation from vehicular circulation. So you see, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but the buses enter on Kruger and then take their own dedicated lane for a bus drop-off around the front of the school that is isolated from a staff parking lot to the north, and then a student parking lot to the east of that with parent pickup and drop-off, and 2 separate student parking lots and visitor parking lots on the western side of the site. You see throughout the site, obviously, a series of site features. I'm not going to go through the building in great specificity just in the interest of time, but it is a 4-story building. We always like to start on the 2nd story because that is where you enter the site. So you enter at the main lobby, and then you can see in dashes the areas of the site that are above where you are. So you go down to the lower level, which houses mostly the athletics and career technical education spaces, and then bypassing the 2nd floor up to the 3rd floor, you can start to see where those common spaces, theater spaces, start to take the top part of the site, and then really the only portion of the site that really kind of maintains its footprint from the 1st floor to the 4th floor is the classroom wing that culminates at Cascade Point at the northeast corner of the building. Thought it would be best, I think, again, Matt did a great job of walking you through the exterior elevations. Our purpose tonight is to come before you for a design review of a building that we think is in keeping with the character of the Sherwood community. One of the comments that we heard very early on, both internal to the district and then from the community, is an interest in making this feel as residential in scale as a building of 342,000 square feet could be, but in contrast to more urban experiences where the building is right up against the property line and you go from a sidewalk to 4 stories tall, we really made an effort to move that building back as far as we could and have it hug its way up the site. You start to see materials that are indicative of the Pacific Northwest, masonry and wood primarily, and an abundance of glazing to allow that natural light to drive into the building. So the rendering in front of you is the main entrance coming from that standalone bus drop. As you work your way closer to the main entry, you start to see those elements again, the masonry and the wood that start to greet you as you walk through the front doors. Working your way further east, you can start to see that grade change there. So the entry that we were just talking about is on the right-hand side of this rendering, and it is about 15 feet above the entry level here at the lowest part of the site at the first floor elevation. This view is probably the one that the majority of people driving along Elwert will take. I will say, I think last time that we came to you in work session, you suggested we develop a section that gives you a better idea of how this relates to adjoining streets and adjoining neighborhoods. And so you'll see that here in a minute when I talk about the height variance. But this view would be from within the site, basically from within the stormwater detention features that we're required to have, looking back towards the library on the left side of the site and the classroom wing on the right, with a view through that corridor that links to the courtyard with a sky bridge that connects the building at the third floor. Moving further into that courtyard, you can start to see again the character of the materials are consistent throughout the building, trying to break up the massing so that you're never seeing kind of the same material go all 4 stories, and working your way through that. Finally, looking at the south elevation from the track in the stadium, trying to get a picture of what that performing arts center, which you're seeing in the background on the left-hand side of the slide, and the gymnasium on the right-hand side of the slide. So I wanted to talk about the height variance. These are elevations that we provided as part of the packet that are incredibly easy to read at the scale, but really what we're trying to indicate is by color both areas where we have mechanical screens, which don't count against the height variance, and then areas in orange there where you can see we do exceed the requirements, but certainly well under, I think it's the 5% or 10% that is the limit for a type B variance. And you can see that on the rest of those elevations as well. One of the things that we talked about last time, again, was to look at what the impacts of those would be to neighbors across the street. Given the complicated geometry of both the building and the site, we thought it would make sense to kind of show you some sections across the site. So in this case, it's a section that cuts across Haid Road or Haiti Road through the parking lots and across the building. So you can see there that in this case we are, I think it's over 600 feet. The nearest portion of the building that we're cutting through is 600 feet from the street there. So obviously it's ways away. Continuing that section now to the south. So this would be the view from looking across Kruger, in which case our building has a stadium between it and the neighbor and a series of fields. You can start to see the site, and we're, I think, over 900 feet away from the edge of our property there. And then looking across Elwert, which is where we are closest to our neighbors and still over, I think, 360 feet away from our neighbors in that case. So we think that while, a building of this scale is difficult to mask relative to a site like this, by allowing it to kind of step its way up the hill, we've done as good a job of that as the site would allow us to do. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Scott Mansour from DKS to talk about the traffic.
Thank you, Karina. Again, I'm Scott Mansour with DKS Associates. I'm just going to tilt this a little bit. So I'm just going to walk you through the transportation impact study that we prepared for the school district. And this is actually the third study that we've prepared for this site. As Brad talked a little about earlier, we had originally a traffic study that was done for the UGB expansion. Then we had a second study as part of the zone change and comprehensive plan change. And that study was done, and there was conditions of approval for traffic, and I'll talk a little bit about those later. And then now this is our traffic impact study for the site development. Just to kind of show you the magnitude of the traffic study, we analyzed 19 intersections, many of which were ODOT, Washington County, and City of Sherwood under their jurisdiction. We had 3 public agencies that we coordinated through this process that have reviewed our traffic work, our traffic analysis, and provided feedback throughout the process. ODOT, Washington County, and the City of Sherwood. We've had a lot of coordination meetings through this process. Some of the recent meetings we had, we've probably had a dozen meetings throughout all 3 studies, but at this time for our site development, we've had the 3 most recent were back in March, April, and May, where we presented our findings and received feedback, made revisions, and all came up to a set of transportation solutions that all agencies in the school district were able to agree upon. Many of the things that we coordinated through the process were background traffic growth assumptions, trip generation, assumptions for all the different school modifications and changes through the bond and the study area, and many, many more. So this is a slide that just shows kind of a reminder of what was happening with the bond, and the intent is to take the existing Sherwood High School and relocate the Laurel Ridge Middle School's 473 current middle school students and the 717 middle school students from Sherwood Middle School and relocate those to the existing high school. And then the existing high school students would be moved to the new Sherwood High School. And so our traffic study not only evaluated the new traffic at the new high school, but also the changes in travel throughout the entire city for all of the planned bond improvements. This is a study looking at, if you recall from our TPR and our zone change analysis, we had to go out 20 years. This study focused on the short term. So at day of opening with this school, what are the improvements that are going to be needed? As you can see, the red dots that we show here are the intersections that fail to meet the jurisdictional operating standards. And those are the intersections that we've recommended improvements for. There's a couple intersections you'll notice at Kruger and Elwert and Sunset, Elwert, and 99. Those are showing it green, and that's because there was conditions of approval for very expensive projects at both of those locations as part of the TPR study. So those improvements were assumed as part of our analysis. So there are also improvements there, and I have some figures walking through all the improvements that have been identified. We also did a safe routes to school plan at the city's request, and the school district was planning to do that anyway. But we evaluated the school's walking boundary and identified where kids will be walking from subdivisions and residential areas to the high school, and looking at what types of improvements would be needed to make sure kids are safe walking and biking to school. And so we came up with a series of improvements that were recommended as part of the Safe Routes to School plan. The first is I don't know if you can see on my, the cursor doesn't show up.
It did for a minute.
It did when
Okay.
he was jiggling it back.
Can you see it on ED Road right now? Okay. There's a small gap in sidewalk along ED Road, so we recommended filling in that for about 575 feet. So that was one of our recommendations.
Purple.
Yeah, it's black on mine, but yeah, up on ED between Copper Terrace to the east. The next recommendation was for bike facilities along Elwert, but between Handley and Haiti. And there's just a gap for kids that want to bike to school. The next one was the 12-foot multi-use path along Elwert and Kruger. So along our project frontage, you can kind of see the dashed green line, and that is a 12-foot multi-use path for both pedestrians and bikes. We also identified a temporary traffic signal. The only reason we say temporary, it's going to look like a permanent signal, but at the point that development occurs on the west side of Elwert in the future, the real long-term intent is that Handley would actually be the main intersection to the high school long-term. And then the current Haiti intersection at Elwert would need to be removed and be modified.
Is that a condition of approval that we can pull that intersection, that light when we want to? And if it's not, I would suggest that, because in Sherwood, we've had those temporaries before, and then we do the main one that's supposed to go in, and the temporary one's still there. So it just may want to be a condition of approval. Oh, am I off?
I'm gonna keep moving just for our time's sake.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had her turn it off. So do you want us to discuss that later? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I mean, I guess okay. So for some of our recommended transportation improvements, at the Edie Elwert intersection, we've recommended a traffic signal. At the Elwert Hanley intersection, we've recommended some turn lanes and widening at that intersection. And I've got some figures, so I'll just kind of quickly go through these. At Elwert and Haiti, a traffic signal with dual northbound left turn lanes, a southbound right turn lane, and eastbound left and right turn lanes. And then also there's a future signal needed at the 99 Brookman intersection, and so the school district will be paying their proportionate share for that future signal. So this is a figure showing some of these improvements. As I mentioned, the temporary traffic signal at Edie Elwert. Also, you can see we're proposing a southbound left turn lane on Elwert at Handley and a left turn lane exiting Handley to improve the capacity. So widening at that location, as well as at the Haiti Elwert intersection, dual northbound lefts from Elwert to serve the morning peak of about 500 students that want to turn left there in the morning, as well as other signal and transportation improvements there for pedestrians and bikes. And then this is showing our two TPR. These were conditioned as part of our transportation planning rule, but was widening Elwert to 5 lanes, building a multi-lane roundabout at this location. Something that isn't shown is the city is also planning to mirror the improvements for 5 lanes on the Sunset approach to that signal. As well as you can see there's pedestrian improvements on 99, some pedestrian medians, and dual left turn lanes on the highway coming southbound. And this is my final slide. Just to go through, these are all the mitigations that are being recommended, kind of what the improvement was identified, whether they are frontage improvements, if it was part of the Safe Routes to School plan, required by the land use plan for operations, and the TPR study. And as you can see, for all the studies, the district is recommending about $12.5 million in transportation improvements to be constructed, and those are all planned to be built by 2020, day of opening, with the exception of the 99 Brookman intersection, which we're just paying a proportionate share to go into the bank until at the time that signal is required. So with that completes our presentation.
Thanks, Scott. And I think it's important to note that that $12.4 million is, again, part of your bond money that's actually going towards those improvements. It's not other agencies or jurisdictions stepping in. It's the taxpayers in Sherwood that are paying for that. I wanted to speak really quickly to a couple of the conditions. Generally, this was the memo that came from the city. This is something that we've been talking to them about all week. We're generally in agreement with the conditions, with a few exceptions, and I'll speak to those. Specifically, first and foremost, I want to talk about the bicycle parking, if we could, just for a second. If you go to page 29 of your packet, which is actually page 18 of 85 in the staff report.
What page? Sorry.
Page 29 in my packet, but it's also page 18 of 85.
Got it. 29.
So we're proposing to provide 268 bicycle parking spaces. I mean, that's the requirement. We're proposing to provide 80 strategically placed around the campus. I think we have substantial evidence from the district that their existing school provides significant amount of bike parking that's not utilized. And so I tend to agree with Commissioner Cottle that location could be a characteristic in this specific application, because there was a very well thought out and study about locating the high school based on the community needs. And there was no place within the existing city limits that could accommodate the programming needs that the high school had identified. Some of the things I take note with in the staff report are the first finding on, I guess, if you turn to page 30, it talks about the applicant is correct in that this code does not include a purpose statement. It would seem the purpose is to encourage the use of bicycles. I would argue that by providing less bicycle parking, we're not necessarily discouraging the use of bicycles. And I think that the district is willing to say that if it ever needed more than 80 bicycle parking spaces, then that is something that we would be willing to look at and accommodate. And I think it's very well noted that that is probably not a need right now. Maybe when the district goes to 2,400 people and you have population in Sherwood West. Within that next paragraph, there's a policy 5 out of the comprehensive plan. They use the comprehensive plan, the transportation chapter, about the standard, or the policy specifically says, the city shall include requirements for the provision of bicycle parking on large commercial, industrial, and multifamily residential projects. It doesn't speak directly, specifically to institutional and public uses. This is a conditional use. It is a use within the district that is typically studied differently than what you would see in a regular commercial, or industrial, or residential standard. So again, I don't believe that it doesn't speak to that, but I don't necessarily believe as a planner that it's a good thing to get rid of bicycle parking, except in this specific instance. You're on the edge of the urban center. In my experience, here in Sherwood, you didn't have a lot of kids biking to school, specifically to the high school. A lot of the high school kids here may be farm kids or have jobs, and I see a lot of them driving. I think that we're responding to, I guess, the local character already here. We don't eliminate the parking. We are proposing to provide 80 spaces strategically placed. Some of those are covered and provided. And I think that our request is based on we think location is a characteristic in this specific instance, and we do believe that based on the experience that the existing high school has, that this is an excessive amount of bicycle spacing. And my point in talking about the central location of the existing high school and whether or not we would ask for it today locationally here or otherwise, I mean, I think it's important to note that that's an excessive standard, and it's not really incumbent upon the school district to ask for that code to be amended. It could be something that the city could take on themselves. So I do believe that we have made the case for the bicycle variance, and would ask that if you also view that you would strike the conditions related to the provision of bicycle parking spaces. If you're still uncomfortable with the condition or the variance, we would ask that you approve the variance, and then maybe put a timeline out there, say a condition that says that it will be reevaluated in 3 years to see if more bicycle parking is needed, and that can be something that you could place back on the district as a condition that would be generally applied to the conditional use, which is not uncharacteristic of conditional uses. Next, I wanted to talk.
Before you move off that, can I ask a question specific? Is it reasonable then, part of our condition wording, to state that the applicant will ensure that there is space available for that parking, and it would be reevaluated within a time frame? I just want to make sure that if I have asked staff, or the commission asked staff to wordsmith a condition, that would be not rejected by us saying you'll hold the space for it. Is that acceptable?
Certainly, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
The next one is the driveway, the 2 driveways. So this would be a new precedent in Sherwood, because when I was here, we never applied it in the manner that is being proposed to be applied now. I certainly understand why staff would want to apply it this way, but the standard specifically talks about minimum non-residential standards, and it talks about again, it doesn't go to institutional, it doesn't list it, but that's not relevant here. It talks about a site. So if you had a site with 400 spaces, the intent is to make sure that you have enough enough accesses onto the site to serve that site. We have 5 locations where we are accessing the site. The one location at the the staff parking lot only has the 1 driveway. I don't think that it's relevant nor necessary to have a second one, and I would just ask that you consider that as well, our interpretation. The next one if we can go back to the memo, I've talked about bike parking and access. So condition, actually it's C1 in your application in the application on page 91. C1 reads,
Oh, wait. Pause. Page 91. Okay.
I'm trying to be like the guy at the end of a mattress commercial giving you everything in my less than a minute left. So prior to the issuance of grading permits on site, the applicant shall provide sufficient evidence to the city, show that all required state and federal permits have been issued for the elimination of the on-site wetlands. We are not asking the city nor you to approve our filling of the wetlands. What we're asking you to do is to honor the Clean Water Services letter, which basically says that if you choose to grade prior to having those permits in place, that you can flag and fence those locations. And we think that's more appropriate, and it's probably more in line with some of the other conditions here.
So all you want to do is bound up those locations as you're grading until you get your permits to move them.
Sure, and certainly.
And that's allowed under Clean Water Services regulations.
And which we're already conditioned to comply with.
Okay.
So this standard is a redundant condition and could be eliminated. And then, it's not to say that we wouldn't have those permits by the time we get our grading permit, but just in case we don't. Again, we're on a tight timeline and we're trying to move dirt as soon as we can. So we would like to have the ability to cordon off some of those if we didn't get those permits in time.
So
and all indications are that, I'm sorry?
Do you have language for C1 that would, are you asking?
I would just strike that condition because there's language elsewhere that talks about compliance with the Clean Water Services letter. That's C7 on page 2 of the memo. Sorry.
C7.
Yes, ma'am.
Prior to the issuance of the site grading permit. Comply with the requirements in memo. Yes, got it.
I know my time's up. I just have a few more if that's.
We're going to plow on unless, does the commission have any disagreement to the applicant exceeding their 30-minute timeline on an application of this scale?
No, no objection.
There are no objections on the commission for you to proceed.
Okay, thank you. So let's see what condition that is. I have a problem, and I've always had a problem, and I've shared this frustration with many people, that you have external agencies that are providing conditions without providing adequate findings to support those conditions. Specifically within, there's a condition in here that we comply with the Washington County Department of Land Use and Transportation's memo, and within their memo, they're dictating or requiring a 12-foot wide multimodal access along Haid Road, which would ultimately be a local road and under their TSP and the city's TSP, that's a local road.
They don't have any control over Haid Road.
They do. It's still a county facility.
Oh, it's still a county road.
But you don't have to impose their conditions.
They own the road.
They own the road, certainly. But here, you're making the decision. So here, this is directly out of their TSP, and I'll enter it into the record, are the exhibits for their local road standards and special area section, if it was, in fact, a special area section, which it was never identified to me that would be it. But we would be required to provide a 12-foot within their TSP. The minimum is 5 feet, and it never goes to a 12-foot multimodal path. And I asked staff about that, but we never heard back. There's no justification in Washington County's memo for that 12-foot ask, so it would impact our proposed stormwater facilities.
I'm trying to figure out how the staff of Washington County has the ability to vary from the published criteria of their local road ordinance.
So are we. That's why I'm talking to you about this. I certainly.
I mean, they don't get to make up their stuff.
I will say that, in here, it's identified as a minimum, but they provide no justification for going above that minimum to impose a 12-foot wide multimodal path. And so we're simply stating or asking that we're certainly willing to comply with the Washington County standards to the extent that they apply, but we don't believe that one applies, and we would ask that.
Which condition is that?
I have it as H8F on their Washington County memo.
Yeah, it's in here on page 94 of our thing. So,
and just to help in the whatever of time, I believe that staff has talked with Washington County and will have a response to that in their rebuttal, I believe.
And
but yes. So I guess you guys can can discuss it, but I believe that we have had conversations with the county and haven't.
So you're just asking that about Hayde Road, not Kruger or Elward?
Right, we're proposing that on Kruger and Elward, where you'd carry more traffic, but certainly. And I'll enter these in. These are directly out of their TSP for their street sections. Actually, it's their design and construction standards for the county street sections.
Would you have any problems with a condition that temporary lights, the discretion of the city pulling it?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, I think you're probably speaking to the one that's over on 12 Sherwood Road that we had an issue with. I certainly think that you're absolutely spot on there, that it does need to be denoted that it is temporary until such a time that a future treatment is allowed and that there's no expectation that that light would remain after that. But I think it could be handled in the findings as opposed to conditions.
Okay.
I think the only point that I want to make relative to the driveway access is I think there was a question about how easy would it be to connect. One of the areas that we're struggling with in that area, particularly if we were trying to connect internally to, for example, the lot to the east, is the significant grade difference.
How about to the buses?
Yeah.
Just to the bus.
There is a solution that would allow us to connect grade-wise to that area. However, as you said, I think our biggest concern would be that people would circumvent the emergency nature of that, and we would be introducing vehicles to a bus circulation route.
But that's a staff-only parking lot that's going to have controlled access.
It's a staff-only parking lot during the school day. After hours, it becomes available to.
But then there's no buses then.
There may be relative to sporting events. You often have sporting buses and exiting vehicles on site at the same time.
Sure, but then you're talking about 1 or 2, 3 buses
But you could also put a
versus
Knox
20.
box there and just keep it on as a locked gate and Knox box it. So it's an emergency only ingress or egress that's a locked gate at all times, and it would.
That seems like a solvable problem.
It does. If you disagree with our interpretation of your code, which, as Brad said, would be the only time that the city has taken this position that it isn't just the circulation of the site itself, not each individual parking lot.
And we'll hear from the rest of the community testifying before we do deliberation also on every item.
800.
About 200 in the staff lot.
Oh.
And I did want to clarify one thing in the traffic study. When we were referring to the desired multi-use path and the need for multi-use path, we identified Kruger and Elward as needing those multi-use paths. We did accidentally mention Haiti in our traffic report, which is where Washington County could have grabbed that condition, but it wasn't really intent to have that multi-use path in there. So just want to clarify that.
The access for the bus pickup and drop off, on its entrance, it'll have clear signage or indication that it's purely just for bus pickup and drop off, correct?
Yes, and there will also be card access that allows access for bus drivers and also delivery vehicles.
Okay, great.
So the additional conditions, we've gone over the ones that you're in disagreement with. There's also a response from the city's traffic engineer, and I'm asking both the applicant and staff if the memo that's dated June 5th from DKS staff recommendation, have these recommendations been incorporated into our findings? Because
I don't believe they've been incorporated, but I don't think they change our findings.
Well, they have, of concern is confirm the total project cost on Highway 99 and Brookman Road. It seems like they want to recalculate what the proportionate share is just confirming that, or maybe it's just confirming the numbers in there. And then it's also asking for a recommendation to remove the bicycle vehicle conflict for cyclists crossing Elwood Road, which would impact this gap in I'm just trying to figure out if the gap that's been identified, proposed to be fixed, then suggested by our consultant to not be fixed because it would put people on bicycles on the way to school crossing at an uncontrolled intersection. So I don't want to discuss it. I just want to know, has staff applied these to the application in response to this memo?
In that respect, I have already spoken with DKS long ago about those concerns, I've spoken with Washington County about it and have plans in place with Washington County to deal with it, and it does not change our recommendations or the notice, the conditions that we've provided for those issues.
That's what I just wanted to make sure, because these are coming in last minute. I just want to make sure that all this information is not going to impact, and I'm not going to change conditions after the applicant leaves their testimony opportunity.
It's not going to change our conditions at all.
This doesn't change any of the conditions approval in the traffic aspect to that. Okay, thank you. Oh, we jumped ahead on your slide.
No, I moved you to questions unless you had, unless you wanted to see that slide specifically.
No, I was just
That
gonna.
concluded our testimony. We would like to reserve 5 minutes for rebuttal. But other than that, we are here to answer any questions of the applicant that you might have.
And you know, sometimes we do ask questions, so.
I've heard a time or two, yeah.
And we do have an opportunity for the community to ask questions, so you can ask questions now, or we can reserve our questions of the applicant till after the citizens have.
Yeah, let the community go.
Okay, so we will see you in a few moments then. Thank you. So,
Chair Simpson, before you call people up, I just want to make sure I heard correctly that they asked for 5 minutes for rebuttal, and I'm assuming by your not saying no that you granted them that 5 minutes for rebuttal after the public testimony is received. Is that?
I agree, at least 5 minutes, because I want them to have an opportunity to answer the questions that the citizens are asking. Those are.
I just because it's a deviation, but you're right, it is a very large project and a lot of detail to go through in half an hour.
Yeah. All right, I have proponents of the application. And as I start this, we all know that I mispronounce everybody's name, so just bear with me, I'll do the best I can. Jack Sapinski.
You're getting there.
I'm getting there.
All right. Good evening. My name is Jack Sapinski. I live at 21290 Southwest Chapman Road. To start, I'm the former student body president of Sherwood High School. I'm here tonight to discuss the approval of the new Sherwood High School conditional use permit. More specifically, not permission for the permit itself, but the timeliness of its approval. Speaking as a former student of Sherwood High School, a school that is already more than 200 students over capacity, as some of you may have heard, I can name some glaring issues that have already arisen as a result of overcrowding. For example, I had 46 classmates in my AP Calculus class, formerly in a portable sized for regular comfortable class sizes of no more than 30 students. We had to relocate to the largest classroom in the school where still 3 students shared desks made for 2, and every day was a constant struggle to find adequate seating. At lunch, it was difficult to navigate the hallways, which were filled with students sitting on the floor to eat their lunches. Parents and families can no longer visit the school to attend our assemblies, as we are already so far over capacity that students are sitting in our gym's aisleways and on court sides to watch. Skipping these gatherings has become common amongst our upperclassmen, who many students look up to. In our 400-seat auditorium, theater shows sell out almost immediately, and our band program has recently moved their concerts to our gymnasium in order to accommodate for the ever-expanding audience sizes. I don't know if you've ever been to a band concert, but they're not the nicest to hear in a gymnasium. The official groundbreaking for the new Sherwood High School has already been pushed back as far as it can be to the end of this month. If it was to be delayed any longer, the school would not be able to open in the fall of 2021 as originally projected, and since we cannot transition to a new school in the middle of a school year, these issues would simply exist and grow worse for another year until the fall of 2022. Furthermore, to put off approval of the conditional use permit for any more time would be to inhibit students from receiving the education and the attention that they deserve. That is why I urge you all to take action now and approve the permit tonight so that the planning of and the construction of the new school can continue on as according to plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nicole Brutowski.
All right, good evening. My name is Nicole Brutowski, and I'm at 22134 Southwest Hines Place in Sherwood. My husband and I have 2 boys, a 7th grader and a junior, and we love this community and the opportunities that the Sherwood School District has provided for our boys. They participated in sports, band, after-school activities and clubs, AP classes, and there is just so much more that's offered at our district. But like any growing community, there's challenges, and I first became aware of the capacity issues when I attended some of the information nights hosted by the district that you heard Karina mention. Out of those discussions, it was clear that we needed a long-term solution at every level, but especially at our high school. The district offered several forums called visioning meetings where they invited parents and community members to share their thoughts, their hopes and concerns and ideas for the school as we continue to grow. And out of those discussions came the idea for the new high school building. I was a part of the campaign committee leading up to the passage of the bond on the November 2016 ballot that was designed to fund improvements across the district, but most notably the building of the new high school. As important as an important part of my role was helping educate the community about what the bond covered, but also gathering questions, thoughts, and concerns about the process as it moved along. Talking to parents at every level, the support for this project is obvious. With current parents of high schoolers, they see the need, and for those with younger students, they're excited about what this means for their kids. As I'm sure you know, this is a huge project, and so much planning has gone into getting us to this point. The goal is for the doors of the new high school to open in the fall of 2020. Next year, my oldest will be graduating. I can't believe we're there already. And the following year, my youngest will be entering the current high school building as a freshman. You've already heard about all the overcrowding. You know that the halls are packed. You know that kids eat on the floor. The portables have been added. You understand that space is needed. As I talk to people in my different volunteer roles, the main concern I hear over and over is that our community wants this project completed on time and on budget. That seems like a reasonable request, and I know it's a priority for the district as well. We've all seen big buildings go up and the opening dates get pushed back by a couple weeks or a month here and there. Usually that's not a big deal. But when we're looking at relocating an entire high school, timing is everything. Keeping this project on track means that our staff and teachers move in and are able to prepare during the summer of 2020 so they can welcome students in September. My youngest is looking forward to his sophomore year. He's helped on the bond campaign and he feels invested in this new building. If the project is delayed, it doesn't necessarily mean just a few weeks or a month. It could be an entire school year lost. The scope of this move makes each deadline crucial for our staff and our students. So I respectfully request that you approve the conditional use permit tonight. Our district has a responsibility to our students and to our community and we're just counting on your continued support for this. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Adam Mitchell.
Hi, thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Adam Mitchell. I live at 22800 Southwest Hostler Way, Sherwood, Oregon, 97140. I've spent the last 8 years working at Laurel Ridge Middle School as a teacher and assistant principal, and up until this year when I joined the high school as a current assistant principal. I've enjoyed my time in Sherwood so much that my family, my wife and I and our 2 young boys moved here 2 years ago to be part of the community. My wife also works in the school district and my 2 boys attend Middleton. I'm urging you as well to take action tonight and approve the conditional use permit for the high school. The current high school is extremely overcrowded and enrollment projections are only rising, and a new facility has been needed for quite some time. Because of the overcrowding and the amount of students in the building, it's putting quite a bit of pressure on the upkeep and the maintenance of the building. It's a constant battle every day to complete work orders, find out what's needed, see what's going wrong each day. Throughout the building, students are eating lunches in places that I didn't even know was a spot in the building to go eat lunch. I found a student today in a spot I had never seen. So every day there's kids all over in different places. Hallways are crowded during passing. I've spent, part of my role is to help freshmen or 8th graders transition to the high school. And so part of my, one of the things I've got to do this year is work with students who have anxiety and concerns about the high school. And that is the number one thing that comes every single time that I meet with the small groups of kids that want to tour the school is how crowded the hallways are, how are they going to get from one place to the other. And so that's something that is needed or is a big issue that happens every day. Another piece that is not always looked at on the surface is how our teachers have to use multiple classrooms throughout the day. There's quite a few that do not have a single classroom that they go to. They're in, as Jack pointed out, we have his calculus class meets in a different room than the teacher normally teaches in, and that applies to quite a large portion of our staff. And that's difficult because if they forget something in one room, they don't have it for their lesson, or those kind of things. It makes supplies and resources difficult to get to our students to what they need. Another piece is, and this really hits home to me on my personal level, is my kids are way into sports and those kind of things. And so the pressure that our growing community has put onto the fields and the facilities that the high school provides and the school district provides right now is great. It's hard to get practice time, it's hard to get field time. So the quicker that this project is approved and built, the more that will lessen that stress on the community. An area that we do need relief on are the bike parking spots, as we've discussed. The 268 is quite a large amount compared to the use that we currently have. Today was a beautiful sunny day, and so I actually kind of enjoyed getting out of my office and doing this. But I went out and counted the spots that we have at the current high school and what was actually being used. We currently have 114 spots for bikes, and today there were 21 of those being used. And knowing that this project is, this meeting was going to be happening way in the past, we've sort of been counting that throughout the year to kind of have an idea of what was reasonable. The 21 today is the largest number that we've counted at any point during the school year. So a beautiful Sunday or sunny morning has 21 kids riding their bike to school. And as we talked about the location, that is to a school that is in the middle of town. We're nowhere in, you can get from the high school to anywhere in town in a short amount of time. When the high school gets moved to whether it's rural or not, at any point in time, it's at the southernmost end of town. So now we're talking about a much longer distance for quite a few kids. So anticipate that number certainly not rising. So with the location and the seldom use that already happens anyway, the 80 spots that we are asking for are more than adequate. So again, I urge you to take action today to get the project started on time. This is a need for Sherwood, our community, our students, and everyone's going to benefit for that as soon as it can get built. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jim Rose.
Good evening, Chair Simpson, Commission members. I'm Jim Rose. I reside at 20360 Southwest Lindley Way here in Sherwood. I'm a 16-year resident of Sherwood, a parent, and I also have the fortunate occupation of being the Chief Operations Officer for the school district. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I'm here to speak to a couple of issues related to our bond, the school district's capital bond, and our need for the approval of the conditional use permit before you. The students of Sherwood deserve the very best that we can give them, and our current facility is not it. Our project is ambitious, and along with city staff, our partner agencies, and a very dedicated team from the school district, we have worked hard the last 18 months to get to this evening. We've had a few bumps along the way, but we are here tonight to keep the momentum going so we can build a high school our community can be proud of. As Chief Operations Officer and being responsible for delivering the bond on time and on budget, it is my job to be thinking about the ramifications of different decisions and requirements we face. Since timing is so critical to us, I have been working to determine the effect of a delay. Unfortunately, the reality is much of a delay from this evening requires us to open the school a full year later, as it is not feasible to open a high school mid-year. Delaying a year will cost the district approximately $8.7 million, which the students will receive absolutely no benefit from. It would just go to inflation and cost escalation. the waterfall effect of moving our middle schools to the existing high school and our elementary school, 2 of them, to the middle schools, would have a similar effect in terms of a cost escalation. The district has enjoyed great support from our community through passing the bond. They've generously supported the district's expansion needs, and it's now time for us to deliver. My ask tonight is that you support our conditional use permit by approving it this very evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Heather Cordy.
Good evening again, Chair Simpson, Commissioners. Heather Cordy, Superintendent in the Sherwood School District. And as you know, leading up to November of 2016, the district went through a very thorough and rigorous community involvement process that led to what really was a bold and sort of go big approach to solve the capacity challenges at every level in our district. Our voters, who are our shared constituents, passed the largest bond in the district's history, designed specifically to address those enrollment capacity challenges. The new high school on a new site is the largest of the projects in our capital improvement program. And as you've heard various people talk about this evening, for the last 18 months, Sherwood School District staff, along with city staff and other partners, have worked really diligently to prepare us for the action that's before you this evening. We recognize that we have a rigorous timeline related to the construction of the new high school and the opening in the fall of 2020. But that date is important for other reasons too. You just heard Mr. Rose talk about the waterfall effect, if you will. What we're talking about there are our transformations projects, and those are the projects that include the current high school transforming into a middle school, the 2 middle schools coming together there in the fall of 2020. And our 2 middle schools transforming into elementary schools. Those changes add capacity at every level all across the district. And right now we're actually in the process of working with the very first transformation advisory committee that includes parents from our community to work on that transformation of the existing high school to a middle school. The timeline of the new high school affects all of those other projects and really impacts all of the students within our district in one way or another. If we're delayed in beginning the high school project, if our timeline is adversely affected, all of those projects will also be delayed, which will create, as you just heard from Mr. Rose, hard fiscal increases to our bond projects and our bond budget. My ask, respectfully, is that you approve our conditional use permit this evening and help us take just a really big step forward in meeting the timelines and the expectations of our community. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Sue Heckler.
Actually Sue Hecker, and I live at 15019 Southwest Ginkgo Court. It's not the first time, it's okay. It's one of my favorites. It always makes me smile. Anyway, I don't really have a lot prepared tonight. Usually I do. It just seems like this has been such a process. I feel like I know you guys so well. I've been here a few times, and just really want to start off by saying thank you for the collaborative nature of all of the folks that we've been working with. It really feels like we're all pulling together, and it hasn't been easy for kids. One thing I honestly had no intention of talking about tonight was traffic and parking lots, but I've been in Sherwood for 22 years and have 2 kids that have already graduated, and I'm incredibly thankful that my youngest drives, so I don't have to go to the high school parking lot anymore because it was awful.
And I will tell you that from Archer Glen to SMS to the high school, if there is a way for parents to drop off their child 30 seconds later and it's a bus lane or it's going through the staff lot, people go straight through it right now, they will find it. So I would ask you to please consider that there is a reason for the way that parking lot is designed for the new high school, with a lot of thought given to it, because if you leave it open, parents will find a way, and it generally messes things up. And it's frustrating to me because some of us try to follow the rules, but just ask you to consider that. And really just a reminder that, this is for all the kids, and the last few folks have talked about it. It's not just the high school that we're talking about. This is, shifting at least 5,300 children into potentially new circumstances and doing this right. I think that's really it. I just thank you for your time. And obviously we want to move ahead as quickly as possible, and know that we've put a lot on all of you to help us do that. And we certainly appreciate your consideration. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So I have several other blue cards, and they are checked as other. So before I move to the other checks, I need to ask if there are any other proponents for the application. And then I need to specifically ask if there are opponents to the application. And now we have others. John Rowland. It's like a lottery. You feel like you won, right? Is there a rule I didn't know? Is there someone else?
That's okay. I'll try to set things up.
Okay, if there's a specific order, I'm flexible.
Are you? Okay. Well,
just tell me the name of the person who's supposed to go first.
Appreciate me doing the Steve Inger.
Okay.
You can sit up there together if you want.
I didn't have the rule book.
And fellow commissioners and other planning commissioners, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about the new high school and the associated permits.
If you could start with your name and address for the record, that'd be great.
My name is
Thank you.
Steve Inger. I live at 18448 Southwest Orchard Hill Lane in Sherwood. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight about.
You're just across the street, essentially. Just
when she said 300 feet, that's me. I'm the second house in on Orchard Hill.
Okay, just so I have a visual of it.
Yeah, you got a visual, you know where I'm at. I am excited about the new high school, and I believe it will be very good for our community. I came to speak with you tonight because I'm concerned about the intersection of Orchard Hill and Elwert Road in terms of safety, increased activity, and traffic flow. The proposed plan shows a stoplight at Hayde Road, which is in very close proximity to Orchard Hill Lane. The proposed plan indicates all traffic to the new school, with the exception of the buses, will go onto Elwert Road and then onto Hayde Road. The complexity of the proximity of the Elks Lodge North driveway, Orchard Hill Lane, and Hayde Road creates a traffic concern that has not been adequately addressed. I don't believe it was in the transportation study. The Elks Lodge will soon make their north driveway their primary access point. They have already completed necessary improvements. Discussions with the Sherwood City Engineer and the applicant's traffic engineer at the Washington County Project Open House last week resulted in a new solution I ask you to consider requiring for this permit. The proposal is to make Orchard Hill Lane a right-in, right-out intersection with Elwert Road, with the northbound through lane of Elwert separated by a curb from the left turn lanes for Hayde Road, preventing Orchard Hill traffic from entering the left turn lanes. This solution increases the safety of the intersection by preventing turns onto Orchard Hill Lane across a complex array of opposing lanes, including the left turn lanes for Hayde Road. The solution also prevents right-turning Orchard Hill Lane traffic from crossing over the northbound through lane of Elwert Road to enter the left turn lanes on Hayde Road. I believe it is in the best interest of our community to require this safety improvement in the design of the transportation facilities associated with the high school permits. I believe that applicants, traffic engineer, and the city planning department understand this concept. I am happy to answer any questions about my testimony. I'd also like to note there were several people from our neighborhood that submitted comments on the county's comment form last Thursday to Patrick Oakes. and I don't know how applicable that is for this organization here, but those comments went to him. Thank you.
Can I ask a question for him?
Yes.
So you're just talking about at Orchard's just putting a triangle hump there so you can only come in right and left. And then the way to cross traffic then is you'd go down to, I can't remember the next street down, so people could come in left if they went through your
would go down to
neighborhood.
Handley, which is
yeah.
what you guys are talking about being the main road anyway.
Okay. I think
I guess the call out there is it may be not a triangle, but it may just be a narrow landscape curb that's 3 feet wide or something, that it would extend from Hade Road down past Orchard Hill so people couldn't cross over it.
I think the concern you're trying to prevent against is people circumventing the Handley access to Hade, cutting through Swanstrom and Orchard Hill, try to get to the high school that way and bypass the queue essentially, and then turn right onto Elwert from Orchard Hill and then left turn onto Hade.
That's exactly right. Yeah. But also to call out in the transportation study, it says Hade Road Orchard Hill is 275 feet to the south of Hade Road, and those 2 left turn lanes queue up traffic in about 250 feet.
Right.
And so, you know, I was trying to do some math today. I'm not a traffic engineer, but that's roughly like 15 cars in each lane, maybe 14, 15 cars in each lane. I don't know how many cars. You said like 500 or so have to go into that school, and I don't know how many will come from this southern direction. But that's a lot of cars to stack up in 250 feet, and people are going to be trying to get right in there. So,
how many of your neighbors are here to say the same thing? If you could just raise your hand so we have an idea. Okay, thank you.
But I don't want to preclude their opportunity to.
No, I'm not. I'm not either. I was just curious if they all want to say similar things, so we have an idea.
Yeah, I believe we have similar concerns, but I can't speak for them.
Okay.
All right. Thank
Any other
you.
Questions?
And I was just looking at it thinking that would also enable, it would prevent someone trying to turn left on Orchard Hill and backing up traffic
Right.
forever on Elwert, because the one left turn
They'll never
on
be able to turn left, yeah.
is going to never happen.
Right.
Okay, I see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure how far you would carry that barrier, but at least past Orchard Hill. I'm not sure if you would want to cut off the Elks or not. You may want to open it up to them.
I was going to say, like you said, traffic engineers are going to have to figure out safety, but that, I'm going to have to ask why it wasn't, you know,
All right. Thank you very
I
much.
absolutely see what you're saying. Thank you.
So for the sake of time, I'll just be real brief. John Rowland, 18406 Southwest Orchard Hill Lane. So I'm about 310 feet from him. Same concerns. I mean, if you look at people trying to go left onto Orchard Hill, say like after school, because everybody talks about going to school, but not about leaving school. So to your point on Elwert, somebody tries to do that, it's going to be chaos. Plus, the Elks' primary entrance will probably eventually be, 50 feet past Orchard Hill? Okay, 110 feet. So there's a lot going on in just that short little area. So
isn't the roundabout where their primary entrance to the Elks is now?
It is now, and then you know, the idea is they're going to sell that property and develop it. And
so it's going to be split?
Yeah, so once that happens, the only entrance into the Elks will be that entrance, because the one around the roundabout will be probably going into a neighborhood, because that's the part they're going to sell.
That's what they would like.
That's what they like to, yeah, exactly.
Absent that explanation, it doesn't make sense to me why we would move the entrance, but now I understand at least the reasoning behind it. So not we, like anyone. But.
Yeah, so the idea is, you know, you're going to see a lot more traffic. I'd say just a couple other quick things. Elwert's becoming the bypass for Newburgh to get to Beaverton.
Right.
You can see that probably only getting worse. So whatever traffic survey was done now, I mean, you can see that just getting worse. I think the other thing was when we were at a meeting just a few weeks ago and I forgot about this, is there's a tree farm at the end of Hade.
Right.
And the week before Thanksgiving until the day before Christmas, I don't know if the traffic survey was done then, but 2,000 more cars. So, I mean, I think the point is, I'll end here, but is that in that short period of space, there is going to be a lot going on. So we're asking for a right out and a right in, basically, on Orchard Hill.
Kind of unique for citizens to ask to limit their ins and outs. Okay.
I think from a safety perspective and for the students as well, I think it's the right thing to do. So anyway, appreciate your time and appreciate your consideration.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that to us. Thank you. Philip Maynard.
Hi, good evening. Philip Maynard. I live at 22240 Southwest Fisk Terrace, just around the corner from Steve. And I'll keep this real brief. I agree. I think ingress and egress from Orchard Hill should be limited to right turn only. And I would offer that while I'm not a traffic engineer, I do have a background in collision reconstruction. And I will tell you that from a pedestrian's perspective, any sort of visual deterrent for kids attempting to cross that road would be a benefit, whether that's a curb with reflective plastic posts, whatever it may be, because basically Hayde is a mid-block for kids to cross. I just think if there was something there, even as a deterrent, I realize it's not a wall, but just as a visual deterrent would be beneficial. And I do have 2 kids who will be attending that school, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Robert Kimmel.
I'm Robert Kimmel. I live at 22184 Southwest Fisk Terrace, and I agree with the traffic concern with that intersection. My only comment is that I have small children that are going to get home from grade school at the same time high schoolers are starting to drive, and if they can make that access, I am concerned about letting my kids play outside.
All right. Thank you very much. Laurel Downing. All right, thank you very much. Kevin Barton.
Good evening, Kevin Barton, 22156 Southwest Fisk. I agree with all my neighbors. All that I would add would be a couple points. One, I'm worried about the increased traffic throughout that entire neighborhood. So I don't directly live at the intersection of Orchard Hill and Elwert, but I live a little ways into it. And I've seen what's happened in the neighborhood with Edie Ridge and the schools and how traffic kind of goes through the different streets that are abutting to the main thoroughfares leading into the school. And so I'm worried about that overflow happening in the neighborhood. And I didn't really see any mention of that in the traffic study. I know it's not the main purpose of the traffic study, but I worry about that. We have 3 children who will be attending that high school. And as it is now, we're concerned about allowing them to walk on that sidewalk that goes along Elwert just because of the amount of traffic that's there and the speed that the traffic goes at. I think anyone that has walked down that road, it's surprising how fast the cars do go. So when we're talking about adding in all those additional cars there, there's a concern about that speed, and especially with high schoolers. The other comment I would make, and this may be not the appropriate time to make it, but when it comes to the bus ingress and egress and the other traffic ingress and egress, you know, that road Elwert, it seems to me, is just going to get busier and busier as you've got more people living in Newburgh and going into Intel and Nike in those areas. I take that to commute myself into Hillsborough, and I wonder if it's the smartest idea to have the ingress and egress for the passenger cars be off of Elwert. It seems like it's, what's the road, Hayde or Haiti? I don't know if that's the name of it, but the other road, it seems like that might be a better
Right now it's Hayde.
Hayde, right. So again, maybe this is too far down the road, no pun intended, in planning. Was that a planning pun?
Yeah, it is. I love it.
Those are fun. But maybe this is too far down the road to mention that, but I just wanted to put that out there that from a citizen's perspective, you know, I know a lot of people put a lot of time into this. It just doesn't make a lot of sense from the citizen's perspective with the fact that that road is so busy as it is with Elwert. So thank you for all your time. I appreciate it.
So just to clarify, there's no planned egress or ingress from Elwert to the site.
To the site.
It's all Haiti and Kruger.
Well, but it's Elwert to Haiti, right?
Right.
Well, there's you can't physically get to Haiti or Kruger without crossing Elwert.
That's why they're putting $12 million in that hole to make that work. Well, to make it work as well as it can work at this juncture.
Right.
So the buses will, if they're coming across Highway 99, will hit the roundabout and then hit Kruger Road and go on to what I call the backside. They'll go down the southern route.
Right, and the cars will go from Elwert into Haiti.
Right.
Correct.
I think I misspoke. What I meant to say, I'm sorry, is to me it didn't make sense to have the buses go on Kruger and the cars go on Haiti. It seemed like you're putting more traffic on Elwert. It seemed like the opposite would be a better plan. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm just telling you that anything that puts more cars on Elwert to me seemed like a bad idea. I just want to put that out there for your consideration.
I see. By limiting the thought being that the buses are going to produce less traffic, but I think cars will be able to go on both Kruger and Haiti.
Because here's their entrance points up
Yeah.
there. So only one parking lot, I think, 2 parking lots come off of Haiti and 2 parking lots come off of the, oh, that's not right?
No.
So my reading was that all the cars will go onto Haiti and all the buses will go on Kruger.
That's correct. Is that right?
Just seemed to me, and there's neighborhoods and things like that on Elwert.
stops the car
There's no
from
neighborhoods
doing
off of Kruger.
I can speak a little bit to I mean, the applicant can answer this better. I can speak a little bit to this from my time on that design committee. That question was brought up in the committee and it was talked fairly extensively. And I think ultimately the site topography played a big role in that, and the easement for the gas line was a factor as well. So I'll let the applicant expand on that more. But it was a consideration. I know as much as a year and a half or 2 years ago.
There's a gas line that comes across right there. Yeah.
Okay, well, again, I just wanted to put that out there that, again, anything that puts more traffic on Elwert didn't seem to me to be a good idea. But I know there are other considerations beyond just the traffic. So I just wanted to mention that.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Eugene Stewart.
Gene Stewart. This has been a long time.
Eugene Stewart, I own property in Sherwood. I live up off of Chapman Road. I think traffic is becoming harder all the time because the last couple months we're experiencing, we come down to 99W off of Chapman. We've seen it where the traffic's backed up all the way to Brookman and Chapman, stop and go.
Right.
And you've got your neighbors to the south, Dundee, Newburgh. People are moving out there because they can't afford to live in Portland. They work in Portland. Same thing that happens up in the Seattle area. People go where they can afford to live, and they go to where the jobs are. Within our comprehensive plan, we seem to have ignored our hope to go towards balance where we're not a bedroom community, but we provide enough jobs so those who want to live in Sherwood can work in Sherwood. They don't have to drive. That takes people off the road. We don't seem to work towards that. We just keep building more and more residential, requiring more schools. And it also, I think one councilman pointed out, was it takes $1.25 for every dollar that you get from residential. You spend $1.25 on commercial, it takes like 25 cents for every dollar they put in. So that formula's got to start being put into place and work towards that, hold up on residential until the commercial can come up and support the growth that we have here. The other thing is that with the residential growth, we keep ignoring the infrastructure for highways. We're at a point, we're probably 10 years behind when we should have started studying for a bypass around Sherwood. Because if you could have taken 90% of the people off 99W to get them around, most of those people, they don't want to drive through Six Corners. They want to get to the other side of Six Corners, hit toward Tualatin.
You know that's not our doing, right? You know that's ODOT's failure.
Right, but we need to start banging on some doors and letting them know we got to work for this, whether it's Metro, ODOT, Washington County, whatever. We got to go in there, and the city's got to start putting some money away so that they can participate. And because just recently, Hillsborough did a project with the state of Oregon, and they put in like 25%, and they got a lot done. But if we just sit here and don't plan to how do we get that? And one of the things is maybe you bring in more commercial and then dedicate their tax money towards road improvements till you get to a point. But the thing is that you put another light we would like on Chapman and Brookman and 99W, that just slows the traffic coming up 99W. So there you get the undulating. And the amazing thing is once you get past Sunset, get through that light, then you breeze along. So there's a timing problem. So if nobody within the city addresses the county and state about this problem, it just sits there and it gets worse. And
you're talking to the wrong board. We have, this isn't the one that has the political power to do
one of the conditions I think you should put in there is that if there are traffic conditions unforeseen that are come from this, then that the city and the school district sit down and figure out a way to resolve these problems. Not just, oh, we got our conditional use permit, we don't have to do anything about it. I think we got to be working towards that. The other thing is that what I've noticed is that sometimes I work downtown Sherwood, and that wonderful traffic mess you have at the middle school and grade school, it's not just there, I guess it's at all the schools. But the thing is, how many of those parents are dropping kids off at both schools? And so now you're going to move Hopkins down to where the middle school is. So are they going to try to stop by the telephone exchange, kick those kids out of the car, and then make a left-hand turn to get to the middle school? I think that's, I know time's up, but
okay.
You let them talk over.
Yeah.
And I think it is important. Traffic should be looked at and made a part of this condition that all the other schools, let's fix those traffic problems because they are bad.
All right. Thank you very much.
By the way, I agree. They are bad.
All right. I do not have any other blue cards. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? If
Haiti.
Haiti.
Thank you.
All right.
People that live there. It's been about 100 years. Haiti.
Haiti Road.
All right. No problem. So before we call the applicant back for rebuttal, I would like to propose a 5-minute recess at a minimum.
Agreed.
All right. So we will recess for 5 minutes.
Read my mind.
Sorry, I just want to make sure that everybody's ready. All right. We're going to resume the Planning Commission meeting for June 5th, 2018. We are ready for the applicant's rebuttal. And preparation for potential questions from the commission.
Okay. One thing I was going to respond to was comments from the neighborhood about Orchard Hill Lane. And I just wanted to clarify that it really wasn't overlooked in the traffic study. It was something that we did evaluate. It was discussed with agencies. It's pretty uncommon to have neighborhoods come and say they want to restrict their access. So that's pretty surprising. But the way we looked at it, and I want to make sure you understand, and the way it operates today, I know you had a lot of concern about left turns from Elwert during school conditions. But remember, it will be a school speed zone, so it'll be 20 miles per hour. And we are building a roundabout, which allows, if it is a challenge for left turns to turn from Elwert into the subdivision, they can always go use the roundabout to turn around and make a U-turn and come back to Orchard Hill.
So are you suggesting it's feasible to put a triangle there or a blockade so people can't do that? Are you saying that's a good idea?
Yeah, it's feasible.
Yeah, we're not, I don't think we would be opposed to that, but from the school district standpoint, it's really more of a city, county, and neighborhood issue to work through.
Other than you guys are bringing like 3,000 trips per day to Elwert.
Correct.
And it's your queuing lane that's going to back up into their turn, right?
Correct, but the left turns could be accommodated with the roundabout.
Right, they could go down and around.
Yes.
So it's easily resolved.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay. Right. But I mean, again, yeah, from a standpoint, we're not opposed. I mean, it's,
not opposed to adding that condition to it.
No, I'm sorry. I think we would be opposed because
you don't feel it's your responsibility,
right, from the
to fund it.
Because there's also probably a public process that would need to take place between the city and the neighborhood to confirm that, as well as the county.
Okay. So, yep.
So I just wanted to respond to a couple of the questions that you had earlier, Commissioner Simpson, about we do have a general condition that we would propose if you are inclined to approve the variance. That would be a general condition that could apply to the school district for this project. And basically the language, and I'll provide it to staff and you after I read it, but the school district shall continually monitor bike usage, and in the instance that additional bicycle parking is warranted, the district shall provide additional parking to meet that need. That doesn't tie you to any time frame. If it happens in 2 years, they'd have to apply, or put it in. If it happens in 5 years, they'd have to put it in 10 years. And then bicycle parking shall be reevaluated for the site in the event that any major modification. So we talked about additionally putting 2,400 students in that time. That would be a major modification, and we could reevaluate it through a commissioning process at that point in time.
So it would be as needed up until a point of a major modification, which would then require it to be reevaluated at that time.
Correct. Because again, the school district's not opposed to providing bicycle parking, but it's a cost right now that's not warranted, and it's also in our minds, we don't think that, we think we've made the case for the variance.
So who determines when as needed is triggered?
Well, the school district themselves. I will say this, when I was here, we were having parking issues at the existing high school, parking issues. So we worked with the school district to kind of look at those parking issues and come up with some, I'm not sure if we ever resolved any ideas or anything like that, but the school district's cognizant of it. If they have kids that are, don't have bicycle parking, that's going to be an issue that they're going to have to raise and deal with. So.
I think the city should be the one that triggers that. With all due respect, school budgets are always crunched, and they don't have a lot of extra money for capital costs.
Certainly, and that's why I added the provision that said in the event of a major modification to the site plan, any type of major modification, it would have to be reevaluated.
I think we're looking at more, or not only looking at, but like I think that the thought is if we're going to give a variance, if we can even find a reason to do so, if we're going to give a variance that reduces it by 75% of the calculated amount, which I want to get into later with staff, then it feels reasonable that the stipulation then becomes, if the city decides it needs to be reevaluated an additional spots need to be accommodated up to that, whatever that threshold of the 268, that should be on the city to be able to trigger that versus because otherwise the school could just say, no, we're not going to do it. And I'm not saying you would. I'm not saying there's any ill intent. I'm just saying that's the reality. If the city doesn't have any way to force the issue, and if people are coming to city council or planning commission and saying, why didn't you enforce the standard, you gave a variance, and we don't have any way to trigger a reevaluation, and it's just all, well, go to the school and ask them to do it, that doesn't feel very good to me.
Fair enough. I mean, but that is a condition. It would be a condition that goes along with this conditional use.
I'm just saying the wording doesn't allow for anybody but the school to do the evaluation and force a response.
Sure. So, sorry. I'm sorry, and I would normally not interrupt when the applicant is doing the rebuttal, but we actually have a potential other alternative that I think it's appropriate for us to discuss so that they can rebut if they don't agree with it. So.
Right, because we don't want to create a condition after the fact. So before we proceed, I would like to poll the commission to see if we have a general consensus that we believe the applicant provided sufficient evidence that the interpretation of the code is different than the original staff report.
I don't think I've heard that personally. I personally believe that 268 is absurd, but I also need to find a reason in the code to get to there. And so I really want to hear from staff is where does the 268 come from? How did that number get generated? And very specifically, and then I maybe get a little bit more clarity from the applicant on why there's a variance that should be triggered, because I don't feel like I've heard that.
So, Chair Simpson, if staff can present their proposed condition, I think it obviates the need for a variance. So you don't even have to get to the issue of whether there is a variance or not. Granted,
Okay,
it's
so
more
then
of a phasing
the variance could potentially be withdrawn if a condition is.
Yeah, right. Essentially, we still believe that they haven't met the case for a variance. However, we have some potential solutions.
All right. So the proposed language as it reads, prior to the issuance of occupancy permits, at least 80 bicycle parking shall be shown on the site plan, shall be constructed with the understanding that with an agreement with the city, additional spaces will be provided for bike parking as demand increases.
I think the intent that staff had was to go ahead and go forward with the denial of the variance. Mm-hmm. But what we would do is we would add a condition of approval saying the final site plan should show a location where all 267 bike parking spaces could potentially fit. And then we would add another condition saying, however, only 80 would be required to be constructed prior to occupancy. And then we would kick in the same thing that Brad was discussing, an agreement between the city and the school that would then trigger a need to revisit it should it ever need to be revisited.
Can I ask this question? Where did the number come from?
Yeah.
What zoning criteria does that come from? Because it doesn't come from institutional zoning. It comes from industrial zoning, commercial zoning. Where did you come up with the number?
Yes.
It actually comes directly from the code. It says that there are 4 bicycle parking spaces required for every classroom.
Right.
It's very specific to high schools.
Yeah. To high schools.
Is that a Sherwood code? Or?
That is a Sherwood code thing.
They pulled that out of somebody else.
Yeah. I'm just.
So
we need that's something.
Yes.
4 per classroom.
It is.
63 classrooms leaves you with a number that staff may agree is quite excessive.
So staff believes that condition meets the code requirements. I don't even want to know why, but
it meets the intent of the code.
Okay, that's all I care about.
Meets the intent of the code, right? And then we would no longer need the variance for bike parking.
So we deny the variance because there's still within our code a requirement for 268 spaces, and the applicant would then agree to a condition that would enable space for 268 with construction of 80 prior to occupancy.
It's essentially providing phasing.
Right.
And we would just kick in the second phase when it was needed, if it were ever needed.
When triggered and evaluated at the time of a major modification.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that what you were going to put was 80? Is that
yes.
And where was that going?
They're strategically located around the building. I think if you look at my narrative, I put in a figure that showed where the individual bike spaces were. Yeah, so down by the sports field, there's several. Up by the tennis courts, there's several.
Yeah.
On both sides of the building where the primary entrances are, there's a lot. Well, relatively.
Okay.
So that takes care of that issue.
So
I just wanted to ask real quick, Brad, in terms of where the additional parking spots would go, will it just need to add the I can't think of the word of it. The bike stand. Yeah, like will the concrete, will everything already be in place and just the racks will just then need to be added at a future point?
A couple things to that point. I mean, there's certainly plenty of probably room along the building where we could provide it. The majority of the 80 spaces we're providing now would be covered by the awnings and stuff coming off of the school. But another thing is they might, at the time that it's warranted or needed, could explore options. There's, Matt had mentioned that there's wall-mounted bike racks at some schools that he's seen where they actually mount them. So, on the side of the building. Karina says no. Karina says no now, but she might say something different when she sees the cost. I mean, I guess.
So her art is going to be defaced by that.
I think what we would do in the final site plan is just show the location on the site, and then at the time that it was warranted or needed, negotiate that with the city as to what type. Yeah.
The only other thing that I want to point out is that even though we show 80 bike parking spaces, we're also providing wall-mounted, in this case, skateboard parking spaces. So there are more alternative ways to get to the site. It just so happens that your code only addresses bicycles, doesn't address, and actually, quite frankly, there are more kids that ride their skateboards to school than they do their bicycles. So
how many
that's what we
skateboard
plan
spots are you
for.
putting in?
What's that?
How many skateboard spots are you putting in?
Rick says the right number.
Great.
I don't know the specifics of that. I'd have to go back and I don't want to tell you a number that's inaccurate.
Okay. So we've got can we get a positive approval of the condition as we're doing?
The applicant concurs with the revised condition of approval as stated by staff.
Okay, thank you. So Mark's next question, and I guess we're going to talk about, is the parking. Does anybody else have any questions on that? Okay, parking egress on the thing.
You said that nowhere else in Sherwood have we ever made that requirement, and I've done some land use in Sherwood, and I'm trying to think of any other building in which there's not continuity between all the parking in Sherwood to begin with.
I guess that's my point. I mean, you'd be setting a precedent. So it just so happens that these parking lots are individual parking lots, but the site itself has 5 ways in and out of it.
Well, let me ask the staff this question. What's the purpose? What do you believe? Because there's no purpose enunciated in this.
Where's this?
And the variance requires us to say it meets the purpose of the code, but the code doesn't tell us the purpose.
This isn't a variance, though.
This isn't a variance.
I know that, but if they want to do it, we're going to have to figure out a way to. What do you think the purpose is of always having 2?
So just to clarify, they haven't asked for a variance. Staff said they didn't meet the standard, but they also pointed out that that it is a difference in interpretation, and so it's really Planning Commission taking one interpretation or another. We're not asking for a variance.
I understand that, but I just want to know, what do you believe the purpose of 2 in? Is it for first-time responders? Is it just a flow of traffic?
I couldn't say there's no purpose stated in the ordinance. It just asks for.
What page is it on?
It's on page 56.
Yes, it says on-site circulation. So I mean,
that's what you think it is just for circulation. Yeah. And how many? And it's just a staff lot. And how many parking lots or spots are in that?
I believe it's 200.
So the final.
That seems like a lot. Yeah.
How many? So all the staff is saying is that our code requires in industrial or commercial.
It says non-residential as the standard.
Well, it says commercial minimum non-residential standard. So it is non-residential. But it doesn't have a chart. It says commercial has this many and residential has this many, starting on page 55 and 56.
I can see a good reason for requiring it, and I can see a good reason in this case for not requiring it. You just, after a football game, it just allows more people to flood out onto the street quicker if you had put in another one there. And otherwise, it essentially acts as a dam to keep them back from that.
Well, or the reality is that
at 3 o'clock.
But the other entrance, the other exit from that lot to Haiti Road, I got that right, would be basically directly adjacent to the entrance and exit from the lot just to the east.
Yeah.
So they'd be
Right.
virtually right next to each other.
But they don't have to have it to Haiti Road. They could have the state.
Yeah, I'm saying if that was the reason was to get more people exiting the
Right.
complex, that's where it would be.
Right,
I
but
agree
they-
with you that that's not the place I would put it.
Yeah, you could put an emergency gated ingress and egress from the lot to that. But so what we're asking, do you interpret the code to say 2 accesses per individual parking lot or 2 accesses per parking lot within a site?
Yep.
I think it's per 2 per
I think
site.
if you look at the title of the section, it's entitled Site Access, and then it says on-site circulation for non-residential areas, total number of driveways, number of parking spaces, number of driveways. We have 5 driveways for 800 parking spaces.
In the metropolitan areas, the interpretation to require each parking lot to have 2 would be unique, because most arterial connectors or major connectors, counties will say, I don't care if it's a church, I don't care if it's a school, you get 1 in and out, and you have to create another one or a long driveway to get your second one in and out. So I go with the 2 for the whole site, because that's my experience, but what do I know?
Any other commissioner want to weigh in on the?
So, I could go either way on the interpretation. I guess my only counterpoint, or if you connected the staff lot to the bus thing and gated it and appropriately secured it, to me, I see benefits to that maybe you can't be foreseen right now, but that could be later. I guess if you guys thought about it, hey, you know what, we don't really want that, and it's a little bit of cost, but there actually could be some downstream benefits from that.
After a football game, we're getting people out a different street.
I would caution about offering up a solution that would change the existing traffic impact analysis for the school district. So, changing the loading of traffic going one way versus traffic the other way.
I don't think my
from
solution
what we
was
have,
proposing
which
that.
is buses off of Kruger.
I think he's
But
doing
my solution wasn't proposing that. I'm saying like something that's normally closed and not accessible, but that could be used. It meets the code requirement is the way the staff interprets it, but then it could be used similar to that gate that's at the high school now down to the field, right? It's never
So it would
open,
only be used in
except
case of
when,
an emergency.
Right, emergency access or for a game, they open it up and let the buses in there, things like that. That's all. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's a regular use thing. I'm trying to find somewhere where we meet staff's interpretation without.
I think this is so unique. I can't imagine too many developments coming in hodgepodge, with all due respect, hodgepodging their parking lots all around the site without internal connection. Because commercials all want internal connection. Churches wanting internal connection.
Industrial ones.
Industrial wants internal connections. Only schools would probably fit.
It makes sense for the staff lot, and we went through a lot of conversations about this, and I get the reasoning, and I agree with it.
Yeah, I was just going to point out that if you did say it's a controlled access, if you're concerned about circulation, you're going to run into the same delays that you would if it was only have one access. But our interpretation of the code is that simply says that if we have over 50 parking spaces required, then you have to have 2 accesses, and we have 5 24-foot accesses. And our traffic study is based on those accesses to the street, not internally, but it would affect our internal circulation to have then staff going out that direction.
Does staff, is there concerns about, other than just meeting the code and your interpretation of it, is there concerns why a second access should be there from that lot?
No, I think our sole intent was to enforce what the code said.
Okay, so, and if we, as a commission, choose to interpret the site access as 2 driveways onto the site, that would.
I think we.
Seems like we have discretion here.
Is the commission?
I'd just leave it the way it is.
I'm comfortable with the applicant's interpretation myself.
So just a point of order. It sounds like you guys are at the point where you're deliberating this, and it's still rebuttal.
We're just taking a poll to understand where we're all at.
Because if I'm going to change a condition, I want the applicant to have an opportunity to do that. So, okay, you're right. We're at deliberation versus a series of questions for the applicant so that they can go back to their chair. One thing that was, I'm just going to start down some of my questions. In ODOT's Exhibit I, they talk about a transportation demand management plan. And I understand that, in a commercial environment where you have an opportunity to stagger start times and stuff like that, but they've recommended it, both ODOT and Washington County recommended it. Has the school considered that or looked into how that, the afternoon's not a huge deal, but the morning start times, are there going to be staggered starts? Is there an opportunity to?
Do you have a 0 hour, I guess is what we're asking? What? So some kids will show up at 7, some kids show up at 8.
What percentage?
I don't know offhand.
There's a transportation demand management study in the.
I guess the problem with that is the whole purpose of having a high school is so that kids that are in 9th grade that need to take the calculus class can be with the upper students. So you can't just say,
right,
9th graders are going to start at 10 and go until 5, and you can't do that. That defeats the whole purpose of the intent of the school, right?
Right. I was just,
Yeah, right.
I don't know how the afternoon again at 3 o'clock is not as detrimental to our transportation as getting everybody there at the same time. And I'm wondering if, as ODOT's recommended, there's some sort of transportation demand management plan that's.
They get parents to stop taking all their kids to school.
Seriously.
With all due respect to all the parents.
Ask yourself, what is the metric that they would be trying to achieve as well, right? And what methodology would they want us to? We spent a year and a half on a methodology for a traffic study. So you introduce that same type of discussion with ODOT and on TDM management. On a facility that typically you don't see TDM management plans because schools are structured so that you have a start time early in the morning and you have an early afternoon, typically prior to the PM peak hour. We'll have kids being released.
What was your AM peak hour study time?
We counted the 7 to 9 a.m.
7
period.
to 9?
Yeah,
Okay.
7 to 9.
But really, this is all between 7:45 and 8:05, right?
That's the peak, yes, because all of our analysis is based on the
PM?
peak 15.
How about PM? Because you got all these students there. What was your PM?
Our PM was actually the peak hour of the adjacent street. So the highest hour, which is 4 to 6 p.m., which is what our evening, even though it's not the highest of the school, that's when the highest volume is on the adjacent streets. And so that's why we analyzed that.
Thank you.
There were, yes, yeah. That's a good point. Did you actually finish the entire rebuttal that you wanted to present to us? There wasn't any opposition, so you weren't really rebutting to anything, but other than what we've been discussing.
I would say no, we were just going to reiterate some of the things that I had discussed weren't missed. But
And you don't have a problem with the temporary light. The reason I'm harping on this, some of you may not know, is on 12 Sherwood Road, we had a temporary light that was supposed to leave, and we put another light a block away, and now we have, and the city didn't have the stomach to go in there and pull it themselves because we didn't make it a condition. And so I just want that as a condition so that somebody doesn't.
Yeah, certainly it wouldn't be a condition that we would oppose. I guess, it's open-ended. No, I guess my point was we wouldn't oppose a condition that says that once the temporary signal is no longer warranted, that it would be removed. You're saying that the school district doesn't remove it.
Right. No.
Well,
the city would remove it as it develops across.
That's not really,
So
and the city would pay us back, right? I mean, the school would pay us back. Right?
Well, it's part of your tax dollars already, right? So.
This is only the 4th or 5th school I've helped pay taxes for, so what the heck?
So I had, and I know you.
Staff got that condition then?
Yeah, staff, just so we have some proposed conditions based on what we were hearing, and so our plan was to have you ask them questions, and then when you're done, we can offer up an additional response. So we certainly can share with you that, but I think it might be more efficient if you ask the questions that you have of the district, and then we can offer up the conditions that we have.
Okay, I had, this was just a concern that I had because I know timing and getting your final occupancy is really critical. The tree plantings all have to occur before you get your final occupancy, but that tree planting would occur in August, which is potentially not the best time to plant a tree. Are you guys, is there any need, I just want to put out there is a need for the conditional use for one of the conditions regarding the tree planting to be not in conjunction with the actual building occupancy, but within 90 days of it. I don't know if we can do that, but my concern is that we're planting trees in August that are going to die, and we're going to have to pay for all the trees.
The plan was not to install trees in August. There are very rigid landscape requirements about the viability of plantings, what the right time of year is for different types of plantings. It's different for lawns, it's different for trees. So while our occupancy is August, September of 2020, it would not be our intention to plant trees in August. And a landscape architect has written specifications specifically around when those plantings would go in. So I don't think it's necessary to write a condition because the requirement is that those trees go in and that they remain viable. And we know how to do that.
Okay, so you don't have any, because I was reading the condition that said you had to have all your trees in before you'd get your occupancy permit.
And that's accurate. We would want to have all of our trees in. They just wouldn't go in right before.
So they do it 6 months before. They can put them in March. They can put them in, they know where they're going to go.
Okay.
They're going to have the grading done.
Okay, I just, like I was trying to do is just not prevent an occupancy because a tree couldn't go in August or something like that.
Oh, we can put trees in August.
Yeah, we just get to pay for them twice.
They just have to be 40 feet deep.
Yeah. So I, just as a comment, we are the design review body also, and so are there any questions of the applicant regarding the design or the height variance that they're asking for? Any questions or concerns of the applicant before we?
I got 2 questions for that. Where are you going to put the additional spots when you need to put 400 more students there?
So I'm going to go back because we actually did indicate it on a concept plan here. Yeah. Sorry. It was at the beginning.
I saw a lot of room for it. I was just curious.
So if you look here, there's essentially a 400 student classroom addition, 3-story, that would go in the future. That is not something that is included as part of our application, but that our master plan for the site did take that into consideration.
How many classrooms does phase 2 include?
Oh, now you're asking me to recall a program. I believe phase 2 includes 22, I believe, but I may be speaking out of turn.
It's 3 levels?
3 stories. And a combination of general education classrooms as well as a makerspace or large flex career tech education space as part of that.
So it'll need that much more bike parking at that time?
No, however, that would be a major modification. We would be coming back to the Planning Commission for approval of that addition. We'd be looking at parking. We'd be looking at traffic. That would trigger a significant. Hopefully. I would ask that you do a code amendment for bike parking between here and then, but yes.
Does that essentially close it up into a triangle, creating a courtyard?
It would enclose courtyard. There are places where we would have access to that for emergency egress, but yes, that would be the intention.
And then the other one was your application's for 2,000 students. So what if you get to 2010? I mean, because they get 2,000 students, and then and I assume the school doesn't want to be cut off. So can we put a plus or minus there? Because
the condition is actually for the built the built conditions to accommodate 2,000 students in the same way that our capacity of the existing high school is 1,550, so 1,550, and currently there are well over that number of students in there. The design itself is designed to accommodate 2,000 students. That isn't a capacity issue.
So there's not a capacity, because I thought the first condition was for 2,000 students, condition that would have only 2,000 students. I just want to make sure that we're not hung up and somebody makes a complaint saying, you got 2,010, you got to go get a new conditional use, because I don't want to do that.
I would agree with you. We're not in the business of turning kids away at the door.
I know. It's like condition number 2. My page is.
It's correct. It's condition A5, and it says this approval is for a school capacity of 2,000 students. Any capacity above 2,000 students will require additional review and approval,
Right.
including but not limited to modification of the site plan and conditional use permit.
So there's a difference between capacity and enrollment.
So I just want to make sure we're okay. We're all okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is what the city attorney just whispered in my
Okay.
ear, so
Okay.
yes.
Perfect.
So we can operate a school over capacity without violating
The conditional
development
use.
code, yes.
You can, just not well. You do it every day.
All right. I have a couple of, I don't know if we have any more questions. So,
traffic questions.
okay. As modified, is the applicant in agreement to all the conditions as they've been modified with the memorandum June 5th and the ones that we've done this evening?
with those exceptions that I spoke to about
Oh, yes.
the C1, which is the requirement that we have the joint aquatics resource permit application from DSL and the Corps of Engineers, that we would just ask that condition be striked because we're also held to the standard of Clean Water Services requirement. And Clean Water Services requirement says that in the event that you don't have those permits at the time you're going in for a permit, that you can flag, delineate, and make sure that those areas aren't impacted. And I would just also add, and you probably read it in there, there's out of 83 acres, there's 0.7 acres of
Yes.
wetlands on here. They're scattered throughout the site. They're generally isolated wetlands based on soil types. And all indications from DSL and the Corps are that we're likely to get our permit. We just don't have it in hand right now.
So does staff have any problems with us striking that? So because the other conditions makes them live up to Clean Water Services?
Correct.
Okay.
So is the commission in agreement to strike the C1?
Bob, did you have something to say?
It's on page 91.
I agree with the striking of the two conditional clauses. I just want to make a very specific point, is that it says, the letter says prior to any work on the site, and then it goes to D, and it talks about the receiving of these things. It doesn't say that if you don't get it, that you'll be allowed to go out and put fencing up and continue on. It doesn't say that in the letter. We assume that Clean Water Services will follow through on that, but we won't control it. So that's how we're basically going to take this little document. You're going to comply with it, and if Clean Water Services says nope, you got to give us the thing, and they don't want to put up the fencing because it's not in their letter, you're conditioned to follow this and any type of stuff that Clean Water Services wants to do. So I'm good with that.
It's in the service provider letter dated the 23rd of May with that standard, which is referenced in that.
So the bottom line is we're fine removing those
Moving it.
conditions because it's referencing that you've got to meet Clean Water Services requirements. And if Clean Water Services is willing to allow you to fence, you get to fence. If they're not, that's that.
That's that.
Yep.
One quick clarification, we're deleting C1 and C2 or just C1?
We're already proposing.
Both of them. C2 was already deleted by staff's memo.
And then it's covered under C7 is what we're saying, is that correct?
Correct.
As it was amended, so referencing the June 5th letter, not the May 23rd
Correct, but if you
letter.
look in that June 5th letter, it actually references the May 23rd.
It incorporates by reference the May letter, okay.
Correct.
So
Then the one last.
1280.
Well, I'm sorry.
Haiti.
Yes. The 12-foot.
That's the only other black mark that's
Yes,
on
ma'am.
my. So I had blue when I was reading it, red when I got it, and then black for tonight. So tonight, staff, regarding the 12-foot wide multi-use path fronting the proposed project site, Kruger Road and Elwood Road are following Washington County standards, and Haiti Road
is following city standards for a neighborhood street classification.
With the 12-foot wide multi-use path.
The neighborhood street classification has an 8-foot wide sidewalk.
So you're good with 8 foot instead of 12 feet?
They picked it up during the TIA. Everybody's missed it. But basically, my conversations with the county on this is that they're going to follow our standard for that road, and we're following, and because it needs to be a 3-lane configuration with travel lanes and a turn lane pocket, we're going to go with the neighborhood standards. If it's the 64-foot wide, they have to dedicate 12 of their property to fit it all in, but it's all still an 8-foot wide sidewalk standard.
So we're going to modify condition 8F to remove Haiti Road from the 12-foot multi-use path.
Correct.
And apply regular city standards on Haiti Road.
For local connector.
Correct.
And so by just striking Haiti Road on 8F, we
take care of
have
it.
complied with that, and the applicant is agreeable to that at their request. That was. Are there any other questions of the applicant?
No, the only clarification that I have, I'm sorry, but I was just handed a note that checked my math, and there were actually 25 classrooms for the record in phase 2, not 22.
All right.
Can you move your slide to the one showing the intersection of Sunset and 99? True.
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm trying to get there.
There you go.
That one, right.
Okay, so this was kind of sped through really quickly in the original presentation, and I just want to hone in a little bit here, so I understand what. And I realize this is a complicated intersection that is 3 different government jurisdictions and plus the school district, and so I understand all that. But something was said, and I just want to clarify. So my understanding is what we're seeing on the top portion, the east side of what's going on there with, is that Kruger or Elwood? I don't know. It's one or the other. It's both.
Yes, it's Elwood.
It's still okay.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing on Elwood there is what's going to be done, and that will be, is that work being done by the school, by the county, by the state? Combination of all 3? Like, it's definitively getting done before opening, though, right?
Yes,
okay.
and yes. It's the school district has paid funds to, and Washington County is actually administering the project that you see on this figure. And there was a lot of questions. I attended the Washington County open house where the public could come and provide feedback on that.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's an intergovernmental agreement.
And so, additional questions about that. So, I'm clear on what's happening on Elwood side and Kruger side. Sidewalks or crosswalks are being added, it looks like, on the south side of Sunset. So, and then you're adding 2 left turn lanes onto Elwood. What is
2 left turns on Highway 99.
Yeah, to Elwood. Yes, that's what I meant. Sorry. Something was mentioned in your presentation about the Sunset side of this intersection, that the city may be doing something, or the county, or I don't know, city, I guess. What I want to know is if maybe this is a staff question, but what is being done on the Sunset side that's going to happen before the school occupancy, and how many lanes are going straight through from Sunset across to Elwood?
At this point in time, we're starting up. It's going to be the city project.
Okay.
So Sunset, the actual intersection of Sunset with Highway 99, which is the opposing side of Kruger and Highway 99, the city will be performing that. We're going to basically mirror what is needed on the Sunset side.
Which is
so we're going to take care of that aspect of it.
So it's 5 lanes, a left turn lane, and then your question was there'll be 2 through lanes on both sides going.
So there'll be 2 from Elwood across to Sunset,
Correct.
2 straight through from Sunset across to Elwood.
Correct.
And will that happen before occupancy?
Yes.
Okay.
No, the city's portion of it. That also. Well, if this all merits 5 turning lanes, why isn't there a de-acceleration lane or an acceleration lane on 99W for it?
That is because ODOT dictated that would be that way. So
yeah, but
you don't argue with them on that one. They are controlling what we do as far as that's concerned, and they have their numbers that support it. And they
and their numbers also support not doing anything to 99 or I-5 and blah blah blah.
Well, that's beyond the scope of
that's beyond the scope of this one.
Okay, I was just curious.
But just to be clear, this work by the city will be done before occupancy.
It'll be done in conjunction with the rest of this work. It has to be. For the intersection to work properly, it has to be.
I agree. This is the first time I've heard that commitment in all of this process. And
It's in our budget. It's already in our budget.
Okay.
We've already started it.
If the city decides to be able to put an overpass, is there enough land in there to put an overpass bridge to get the kids from one side of
a pedestrian
I
path?
could not answer that at this time. I have not studied anything relative to that. So that is, I guess, something that you would have to take up with the city council or other people.
Okay.
So to the point of this road project, the Orchard Hill Lane Road revision, how does that?
I'm going to defer to Scott on what the TIAA, Scott Manser with DKS, and what the study shows as far as that goes, whether or not it was, the numbers warranted any type of mitigation.
And then while he's explaining that to us, we now have citizens coming to us with this statement, and my concern would be that if we don't take the opportunity now, we will have a Lindley Way cut-through problem that will forever be plaguing the council with citizens coming through asking for
stop signs in every 5 feet and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think this is if this is the right place and it's the right thing.
But is it though? Is it a decision? Do we have control over what happens onto Elwart necessarily at all, or is that ODOT?
No, Elwart's county road.
Sorry,
but it's part of this project.
With respect to dictating technical items of that nature that are that severe, where I don't think the commission at this point, you're running on feelings about what you might think, that a review of it via a technical review would be more appropriate before placing a condition that we could not justify technically.
I tend to agree with you, except we have lots of places in this town where people haul street to get onto Oregon Street because we put in that new configuration there. You can't do there during rush hour because the traffic lines up all the way down Oregon Street and you can't take a left.
There are areas within Sherwood that do have traffic flow problems.
But I don't want these.
But we deal with that on a case-by-case basis.
Well, you still
and that's why I'm going back to the engineer who will give information, what we do have, of the information that we have currently on that and whether it meets the warrants necessary to do something. Doesn't mean we can't do something, but if it doesn't meet warrants, I'm pretty unwilling to condition a school to pay for something that is not necessarily defined by.
But hold on, the solution though is pretty inexpensive. Because
if there's a problem, there is. I would say if there is a problem, then we have to come up with a solution. But if there is no problem, there is no solution that we have to come up with.
You're right. So you're queuing to turn left onto the street.
Mm-hmm. From Handley onto Haiti.
Haiti Street. Yeah. Does it queue back to block Orchard Hill?
No. It does not.
Whoa. You said no, it does not queue back?
Yeah.
So the queuing from Elwart to turn left onto Haiti
does not exceed 250 feet that we've identified as storage needs between the two intersections.
How far does it queue back to?
Actually, our analysis, and we actually did a very detailed simulation model, and it was around 200 feet, and we extended it the turn lanes by 50 feet for overflow.
And so the turn lanes are actually going to make the road 4 lanes in front of Orchard Hill?
Correct. Yeah, 1 travel lane each direction plus dual left turn lanes.
And so someone's going to have to turn left from Orchard Hill across
4
3
lanes of traffic. Right. No, 3 lanes of traffic if you're turning left.
Correct,
So
3 lanes.
what's the queuing time then for people on Orchard Hill to get out during AM and PM peak times? Hold on.
I mean, from the traffic study, it met the city's standard.
That doesn't
What is
answer
that?
my question.
Yeah.
What's the queuing time they'll have to sit there and wait?
Queuing, like how many cars are stacked up, or
how much time are they going to have to wait to get out?
the delay? I can pull that information up for you.
For a left turn or for a right turn?
Left turn, right turn, they have a lot of ways.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what I
yeah.
expect, but
I guess my other question would be, what's the profile of the road for sight distance? Because I guess if a guy from Orchard Hill has to wait to turn left, he's just going to go over to Hanley and turn at the controlled intersection. My greater concern is, will be, is the safety of someone trying to make that turn and cutting across the traffic and creating an accident.
that's what he's talking about, the technical.
So the only point that I would make, and I'm going to support Bob's position here, which will likely be no surprise, is that we have spent 18 months going through a detailed traffic study, looked at intersections that failed city standard, have had opportunities for public comments that were sent out to everyone, not just those that
but that's
came
why we're
tonight.
here tonight.
No, I understand that, but my fear is we may make a decision tonight, and there may be other neighbors who didn't know that this was being talked about tonight that may have a different opinion.
That's the consequence of them not showing up. But I will say this: our code requires you, when you build something, to not adversely affect the neighbors, and we have a whole neighborhood group saying this is going to adversely affect us, and the solution is inexpensive and pretty easy to resolve.
And the other thing I would say is that, I know, traffic studies are imperfect, like everything else we do in this world. And we have lots of examples here in Sherwood of cases where we've done a traffic study, we've built out based on that traffic study, and history has proven it was the wrong, ineffective in certain areas. And I'm concerned, and we have situations in town that are extremely similar to this one, where, we clearly have a traffic flow problem, and are we doing enough diligence to ensure that we're not just duplicating one of those situations? And I think it's a reasonable question to ask, and I know there's a time essence here that's been talked about by a lot of the supporters, but I will also say, to that point, there's been a lot of delays in this project, up until now, and for various reasons. And no one wants to see this project completed on time more than me, but I don't think it's fair to burden this board with the responsibility to rush through our responsibility to meet a timeline that's already been delayed for other reasons. So I hear that concern, but I also think we owe it to the city and the citizens to do our jobs.
Yeah. So in the morning, just to respond to your question about how long is the delay, on the average delay in the morning, so if you take the peak hour of traffic turning out, the average delay will be about 30 seconds per vehicle. Okay. So you could have some vehicles that wait longer than that. You could have others that make that turn.
Does it also tell me how many people are going to use that to cut through if they're allowed to?
Yeah, I mean, we evaluated a lot of one of the things the city had asked us to do is look at traffic impacts through the neighborhood. And
I don't want to put a big burden on, and I don't want to delay this at all. But the solution seems to be so simple. A triangle there with a sign in the middle that says no left turns, and a sign on it's so
actually a cheaper option, and probably the safer option is those triangles that you're referring to. Actually, a lot of the safety studies have shown those aren't very effective because people actually still make those
left
left
turns. Put a sign right in the middle.
But what would be an even cheaper option is like a 12-inch curb between the left turn lane and the through lane to stop traffic from turning left.
I'm happy with either one of those two, but I'm not voting for this if we don't fix that.
My concern, and Bob will chime in, is that hasn't been studied, a right in, right out, and I don't know what that does for traffic. So right now, we're certainly hearing from a couple of commissioners, and so I don't know where the rest of the commission is. I would ask that if the majority of the commission did want to have such a condition, that you would at least have the caveat that would allow us to, unless a study shows that it is less safe, because I'm really concerned about creating a knee-jerk reaction that is doing the opposite.
No, I don't have a problem with that. So the condition is we put in that cheaper middle of the road thing with probably those little rubber things that.
It'd be like,
Again, I caution about the planning commission making technical decisions that they're not qualified to make. What you can do is have the traffic engineer for the applicant look at the situation and come up with some acceptable solutions to the concerns. Don't dictate it for them. Have them come up with it. We'll write the condition around it, but let them deal with it.
I have no
and
problem
then we'll
with that.
follow that.
As long as we put a condition in there that this has to be addressed.
Revisited by the applicant and staff and
do that.
Did we get an answer on the cut through traffic?
Yeah, we did evaluate, and we didn't see any substantial cut through expected on Orchard Hill.
Okay. So is it?
Sorry, just to dig in on that a little bit. So what's the queuing time from Handley to turn left onto Elwert? So morning, like you're coming down Handley, you want to turn left onto Elwert, so you can go right onto Haiti and into the school. What's that queuing time?
It's a controlled intersection.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Or when you say controlled,
But still, it's a lighted intersection.
How many? Not a light.
It will be a light.
It will be a light. That's part of the conditions.
It'll be prior to occupancy. It will be a light. Haiti.
Yeah, I'm talking about Handley.
Handley is not.
So he's talking about coming up here. Isn't this going to be controlled?
No.
Not at all.
No, it just has, it will be a two-stage turn to turn left.
Yeah, so that's what my question still remains then. If there's people coming up Handley to turn left onto Elwert to go to the school,
of course,
what's that queuing time? Because if that queuing time is long, they're going to circumnavigate through Orchard Hill.
Go right and then go left versus left.
Well, here's my concern. You're right, and I've seen it in Oregon Trails.
That's Lindley.
I've seen it in every other subdivision around because people always traffic is like water, and
they'll find the way. Yeah.
But I'm
This
very
will be
concerned that we
lighted later. Phase
much
two.
later.
Okay. Yeah.
we're delaying this.
Because
And this, it's part of this is the city's responsibility also to study this, figure out the best way to resolve the problem.
Sorry.
But moving this forward, because for every solution they come up with, we're going to have more questions.
right now until the second.
That's my concern.
So with the additional turn lanes and the improvements at Handley, it's about 2 seconds faster to make the left turn from Handley. So that's, as you're thinking about, cut through, it's usually there's going to be there's going to be an improvement similar to water taking the path of least resistance. And that's the Handley, with our improvement allowing the 2-stage left turn. It's
2 second improvement over what?
In comparison, in delay. So it's actually going to be faster to make the left turn.
What is the queue time though?
28 seconds per vehicle.
Someone's going to come to Handley, want to turn left, and they're going to wait 30 seconds. 28 seconds.
Right.
I was rounding, sorry.
And 30 at Orchard
Okay,
Hill.
so 28 seconds at Handley.
30
at But that's Handley's coming from what? So I'm trying to think back to where they're coming off of 99 that way. So
99 and
but there could be 10 cars stacked up. So if you're the 10th car in line, you're talking about what's that? 5-minute wait.
Remember, that's average delay. So if you for somebody that might have to wait a minute and a half, you're going to have somebody else that only takes 5 to 10 seconds to make that left turn.
So what was that condition you said about Orchard Hill that would resolve it? Is put a condition that the staff will work with their traffic engineer to move this forward to resolve the safety concerns and the right in and right out in the neighborhoods. Requested.
This is compounded because the county's building these things for the school district. So it still has to go through the county contract changes. They have scope of work change. It's going to add time to the other end of this whole thing. So anyway, it says prior to occupancy, the applicant, the city, and the county shall study the intersection at Orchard Hill and Elwood Road to develop safety improvements if warranted. And actually what I would say is it's not prior to occupancy, it's prior to acceptance of public improvements. Once public improvements, the roadway are done, we're finished.
Right.
So I would say prior to acceptance of public improvements, the applicant, the city, and the county shall study the intersection at Orchard Hill, Elwood Road, and develop safety improvements if warranted. I can't tell that that's going to make
warranted is you're using that in the technical term.
Basically, if it doesn't come up technically as necessary, I don't feel I have the authority to condition that type of public requirement.
No, right. I totally get that. Does the city still have the allowance that if a neighborhood comes to it to make traffic changes? Does the city still have that in their code?
County road.
I know that, but Orchard Hill is not. And what I'm talking, there's other solutions that
the right of way of Orchard Hill would be the impact would be also on the county road.
Yeah, they won't care if we do something.
Well, they may. The school district may, because the county is building this thing, and if they're going to be doing all this stuff, they're going to have a complaint. It doesn't matter. The idea is, could they do it? There is signage, but I don't believe I've ever, as long as I've been here, I've only had 1 or 2 items where they've had the community come up through the council and get directive from the council for me to do something.
Here's my, and this is probably just a planning problem I have because Oregon's always planning and never doing, is that the solution here is really easy. We impose a condition on them to do this. We don't have to spend $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 studying this thing to death because the solution is as cheap as the whole study and the whole time spent on it.
But
that's my practical approach to life.
I understand that, but you're predicating your comment on assuming that there's an issue.
Right.
I'm saying you don't know there's an issue.
Right.
I disagree because the code says that we have to mitigate and not impact the neighbors, and the neighbors have issued testimony, which is all we can take, that says it will, and we can, and unless they appeal it to Luba, what do I care if we put that condition on?
We've got traffic data that says it doesn't impact it.
I know so.
You're saying that because somebody comes up and says, oh, it does impact it on a future development, that they're right over what is generally used as the benchmark for determining what mitigation improvements are.
Your numbers are based upon a hodgepodge of what all these things say they could and could not do, and I've seen that fail over and over. Walmart has a kid dead because we put that straight through saying nothing's going to happen there. Well, a kid died within a few months. And we now have massive more flashing lights that still don't work. And so, with all due respect to you traffic folks, sometimes practical approaches is better than the technical approach, but that's just me.
All right. So, with that being said, I don't believe that we can overreach our authority to be able to go against a technical data. We have to find evidence from the traffic engineers that would enable us to make a decision, and the opportunity that we have to do that is through a condition that would allow further study. Am I correct in what staff is directing us? And the applicant is understanding that of our concern and able to accept that condition.
This seems kind of weird to me.
That
like all of this, because it's like we're wanting to condition something that I feel they already did, and it's like, okay, go back and try to see if you can find something that you did wrong. It just seems redundant, weird. I don't know another word to say.
Okay, what's the rest of the commission?
So, do you
We're
feel?
just saying, go back and do what you just did.
Right.
That's what I hear. Go back and do what you just did. I think they're going to find the same findings.
And
it's prolonging something.
It's
that,
still causing.
I totally agree.
I think we should just move on.
And not add a condition.
Yes.
Okay.
I would have a condition.
Lori, Commissioner Holm.
I
I feel that if we can address our citizens' concerns through a condition that just has us do the study to verify whether or not it's going to affect it.
Well, are we having the same people do the verification? That's what's weird about it.
Yeah, double check your work.
The only way that I would accept a different answer is if it was completely a whole nother entity that came in, and we don't want to do that.
But I mean, that's not for us to dictate. That would be for staff and the applicant to determine the relevant organization to do the study.
Yes, Commissioner.
We could land on this. We could say that a potential problem has been identified by the public, and a solution has been found, and now we could potentially ask the applicant to study that specific solution to see if it creates any traffic impacts, and then I think everybody wins.
I think that works. That works really well.
Because then we'll still have a study to back it up, and if the study doesn't warrant the addition of this specific identified improvement, then the improvement doesn't happen.
Well, the study just needs to do, does this in any way negatively impact the traffic? And if it doesn't, then the solution is you put in the cheap thing that goes across there and we're done.
Now, if there's a reason your last
If
name is
it's
Street.
permittable. I mean, I guess the other thing is, I mean, again, I think that is a good compromise, to sort of like study that solution. The county may say, no, that's, you know, so if it's not a safer, better solution that can be permitted.
Everybody has to realize it's a county road and they don't have to do what we say.
And you got to remember, the county's going to go right back to the numbers and say, is it warranted? The TIA is completed. They bought off on it and they've said, you're done.
I know.
I mean, you could do this. I don't disagree with the ability to go back and say, let's revisit it, or let's see if this is a viable item that can be installed. I'm having a hard time, what I'm really having a hard time swallowing is putting it on the developer, because they didn't cause this.
You know what?
It isn't their issue.
We just saved them 200 bike spots, and this isn't going to cost any more than that, and they're no worse off.
That's fine, but from my point of view, I worked hard with these guys. I battered them over the TIA, and this is what we came up with, and I can support what we came up with. If you've got additional information, great. We'll take it into account if it is something that works with the data that we work with normally.
I know, and you're a data guy, and I'm an evidence guy, where the evidence for me is they've identified a very viable concern
and
a very simple resolution, very cheap. So I liked his solution. Study to see if this impacts, if it doesn't negatively impact the traffic, then put it in, because it's a cheap alternative to all of this. And you don't have to spend money studying to that.
Put a condition on a condition.
Yeah, there we go.
As allowed by county.
The only way that you would have considered right in, right out is if there was some specific problem that popped up for that intersection, right?
Correct.
And that's why you didn't go beyond what you did.
Correct.
That's why I just really, really feel like we're just adding extra.
But did your traffic study take into account?
I don't hear the citizens' problems. It's just.
Yeah, can I just add something? I mean, we could study that solution, but if it comes back and it says, no, it doesn't warrant it, that solution's not going to work, it's not going to be good enough for the neighbors.
Well, no.
They're still going to say, no, there's still a problem. So there is still always going to be a problem.
That's not the condition. The condition is you will do this unless it negatively impacts the traffic analysis.
That's not the condition that was written.
See, my problem is I'm not sure your traffic study took into account that there's going to be 200, 300, 400 kids jumping across that road right there, because that's what we keep telling them. Go to an intersection and walk across there. And so we're going to be asking those kids, and did your traffic analysis take into account the pedestrians that will cut across there?
Yeah, that's what the Safe Routes to School study did, and that's why we're providing a signal just right up that will provide that safe crossing.
But high school kids aren't going to go to the signal.
You know that's not right, because Walmart has people won't even use the sidewalk that's right here, crosswalk that's right here. They'll cut across on the other side, and they do it all the time, and we know
You're
they don't
asking
use
us
those.
to regulate human behavior, right? So look,
No, I'm not. I'm
but
asking you to put a barrier so they
your
can't
development code is intended to regulate that behavior.
I'm not
so
asking that.
Well, I mean, essentially, you're saying that human behavior is going to say that I'm going to just jump the and go through Orchard Hill.
That's not what I'm saying at all, because I'm saying we're putting up a barrier so they couldn't do it if they wanted to.
The barrier we're talking about, it's just a 12-inch traffic curb, and they just step over it.
Kids are, okay.
Kids will do what kids do, I guess.
Was there, speaking on the pedestrian side of Orchard Hill, because I was looking through that design earlier, my thought initially was kids, high school kids walking from Orchard Hill are, in my opinion, they're going to want to immediately cross over and join the 12-foot wide manicured boulevard that runs on the school side of the street and not go up to Haiti and cross at the signal. So was there any thought given to putting a pedestrian crossing at Orchard Hill?
So part of the reason why we're directing traffic onto Haiti is because if you look along Elwert, there's significant grading issues, and that's where we have all of our stormwater features.
Right.
So they would cross and then have to walk along Elwert to go back on Haiti. So the Safe Routes to School plan is to keep them on the eastern side of Elwert where there is a safe crossing at Haiti and take them across there because that is the safe route to school. Again, mitigating human behavior, they would cut across, but then they couldn't go straight up to the site.
No, but they're on the big boulevard, that's cool. And all the people walking up from the roundabout are already on that side of the street, right? So they're going to, I'm just speculating. So I'm just asking if you guys studied that.
I think the safe, as a pedestrian, crossing 3 lanes on each side, I would go to the intersection.
Yeah, but you're not a high school kid.
You're a mature adult. We're talking about
if a bunch of their friends are walking up the boulevard next to the school and the trees and all of that on the other side.
I don't want to hold it up.
I was going to say, we can't regulate human behavior. We have a safe routes to school.
No, I'm just asking. I'm asking a very specific question. If a pedestrian crossing at Orchard Hill was considered or
All we
studied.
have to do is have evidence to support it.
So that's all.
No, because it would create more safety issues than trying to direct them to the traffic signal at Haiti.
Compared to.
That's what you want to believe.
I know, and I get what you're saying. I totally do.
I don't want to hold it up for. I encourage you to go to the city council.
Okay, we can't take testimony.
We can't take it from audience.
I've tried to go to every hearing or every public offering we've had, and that transportation study came out on April 25th, and I've tried to go to every one of those, and we learned last week at these 2 open houses, so I apologize if I missed one. I pulled all the ones I've attended.
Okay.
And I read the transportation study, and I believe there is a legitimate concern. We're talking about a variance of a few feet here, 250 feet to 275.
Well, we've had a spirited debate about it, so we'll see what happens.
We can't take testimony from the audience anymore, sorry.
We need to have staff do their thing.
Okay, so staff,
We're rapidly drafting.
you're rapidly drafting. So
Should we take 5 minutes?
we can ask if there's any more questions of the applicant before we close the public part of this. Are there any more questions of applicant before they?
I don't know.
All right. Applicant have any more closing comments before we, we're going to wordsmith this condition. We'll allow you an opportunity to provide.
I appreciate that. The only thing we would say in closing is how much we appreciate the time and the effort, not only by the Planning Commission, but really want to thank our partners at the city for the last 18 months of cooperation and recognizing the urgency to get kids moved into this building and construction started. So on behalf of the district, just want to extend our thank you to the city again.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Are you through crafting? And
Is Bob okay?
Bob is
I've never trusted a traffic engineer.
I put words in here specifically to satisfy Bob. I don't know if it's going to work or not. He mildly accepts it. What we've got so far here is the applicant shall, and we can change this if you like, the applicant shall study a potential right-in, right-out improvement on Orchard Hill Road onto Elbert Road. If the citizen-identified improvement does not hinder traffic or present safety issues, the improvement shall be constructed pending county acceptance.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's why they get paid the big bucks and we're doing it for free, because they know what they're doing.
So I would ask the commission to take a straw poll if this condition, well, first let's ask the applicant if they're going to.
You have a problem with that? You guys are.
So, I mean, the only, and I know it seems like a small thing now, but part of the reason why we spent 18 months looking at this is because we've identified over $12.5 or $12.4 million worth of improvements. And I know that you say it's going to be, it's meager, but 12.4 is already considerably more than was budgeted that is required on any other school that I've ever worked on. And so that's my only reluctance, is burdening this school district and the local taxpayers further beyond the 12 million that's already been identified.
I am the local taxpayer. We are the local taxpayer, and you guys picked a site that was rural in its inception with all the roads, and Sunset was a nightmare to begin with, so I'm not that sympathetic to that at all.
So.
Okay. The question before us is the condition as proposed acceptable to the school district? I have to look at my client first. Reluctantly, I think we would concur.
Great.
I would ask the commission if they are in agreement to adding this condition. If there's any concerns about.
Does that create a delay for?
I don't think so. Not if we approve. Not if we approve everything.
Matt, did you say in your condition that this would be prior to? Can we add language prior to acceptance?
We actually didn't have a timing provision on this, and that was somewhat intentional. But we can certainly add. He's going to want prior to public acceptance of.
Yeah, I just don't want it public, prior to grading permit. That's my only.
Let's put it this way: prior to acceptance of public improvements, these are going to have to be done. So
if
we can stretch this
adverse.
design out and work it through the project at any point.
In conjunction with Washington
Are you going to be
County.
able to get the county to sign off on it by that point?
Let's put it this way: if the county says no, it's their project,
Agreed.
their road. They say no, we're done.
I totally
Okay.
agree.
But I just wanted to make sure that if they say yes,
I will advocate for it as best I can, because part of this is not just the county approval, it's city approval, because Orchard Hill Road is city road.
Right.
So it's going to need both of the engineering departments working together to approve this change. And I will be advocating to it as best I can. And since we have the school district's reluctant approval support, and that it doesn't hinder their ability to get started, and that we're working through the problem and getting their project constructed as quickly as possible, I would accept it.
Is the county asking us to take any of these roads over as city roads? They usually do that. They've been trying to.
Hayde probably, Kruger probably. Hayde.
No. Hayde only. Hayde only.
Okay.
At this point in time.
Okay.
Because
They tried to get us to take 12th and Sherwood Road over before they improved it. We were smart enough to say no.
Yeah, no. We will. The roadway will be constructed and will be completed under Washington County jurisdictional control. Once it's accepted, then we will transfer it to the city.
Oh, that's what I figured was going to happen. Okay.
So, can I speak now to the proposed condition? Are we ready to?
Yeah, I just had one other, go ahead, because I have one concern.
So my concern with this condition is it seems to be a very precedent-setting condition to me, in that I understand we're saying, great, if you don't have an adverse impact, then we're going to do it. But we aren't saying there's anything that in the data or in the studies or in anything that's going to actually trigger a reason to do it. That opens up a huge can of worms down the road. I mean, everybody could come to us and say, hey, if do this improvement because I think it's going to make things safer, even though the data doesn't support that. And as long as it doesn't adversely impact the existing traffic, you should do it because you did it before. And I struggle with that greatly. I greatly struggle with that concept.
I appreciate that.
And I'm completely sympathetic to the concern because I believe that the concern is valid, but I also believe I'm a very data-centric person, and I believe you have to be able to support it with data, not just anecdotally, even if I believe anecdotally it's probably legitimate. That's where I'm struggling with this condition.
And my struggle is that it was never noticed that we would be doing this to the road. And so, to me, not through the project did we indicate to the rest of the citizens that live on Orchard Lane or Swanstrom or the other streets, Fisk, would they be aware that we had planned on changing their neighborhood, so there wasn't an opportunity for the public to provide outreach at that level. And that to me is one of the more important things, because design, what we came in here to find out if we are design reviewing, went through such a huge community outreach that everybody, had an opportunity to weigh in on that, and had opportunities to weigh in on many other aspects of this project. To have us at last minute.
But isn't that the nature of a design review and a conditional use?
On
You have a public hearing and anything can come up and changes are made.
So I would
on
just
the
add
design
to that.
reviewer, but not on a technical document. We wouldn't have changed the water, sewer, or storm.
Oh, I'd change the storm. I think Washington County's way overreaching on making you put over almost an acre and a half of stormwater.
I would just say that I think the condition worded is like, even though we would hesitantly accept it, just accept the fact that the citizens should actually be going to the city council about these types of issues too, because of the whole public outreach requirement. And Washington County, it's not we've already provided a study that says that that we weren't affecting it. And so now you're asking us to fix something that we've shown that we're not affecting, just essentially on the testimony of 7 or 8 people that showed up.
It's a timing
and you have
issue.
a whole neighborhood.
Yeah, but
that
it's a
hasn't been
timing
done.
issue. Then we do that. We send them to city council. City council says, well, if they would have made a condition, we would have made you do it. But Washington County's already accepted it. So, I mean, it's sort of a cat and mouse here. This is the time and place for conditions for any impact that we see on this site, right? But I'm happy with that condition. If the other other commissioners aren't, then that's just the way
Again,
it is.
I agree with, the planning commission has a lot of control over what gets done. I agree with that. But when it comes to safety requirements, technical requirements, I don't think the planning commission has standing to overrule a technical report. I'm sorry. That's what we get paid for. That's the liability that's on our shoulders. I don't want anybody hurt. I know the person you're talking about because I dealt with the family.
Right.
And again, there's a whole scenario behind that. And I can tell you about people who will look at that crosswalk and walk right across it without even punching the button. I've seen it. I've been out there.
I've slammed on my brakes for a few of those.
So, with that being said, we try to control people's behavioral attitudes best we can by providing them with the facilities to cross safely. We do so knowing that we are trying to meet warrants which are established throughout the nation. This isn't something that's unique to Oregon or even Sherwood. This is national standards that everybody else uses. This is the best we can do with our technology, and that's what we try to adhere to. The other issue, like you brought up, is that if we start dictating to people to do stuff based on whim that's not supported by the reporting, you're setting precedence on something that I don't think that, well, we'll just go down to Tigard, where the Dolan case was held. You're setting yourself up for the same type of issue where you're placing a condition on a developer and he hasn't got a choice about it. He has to do it because you're saying it's got to be done for you to approve it. If
They
it's not
accepted the
supported
condition.
technically, I can't support it.
I understand. And that's your job, right?
So before we go any further, do we need input from the city attorney that is got his microphone right in front of him, ready to?
I share Commissioner Scott's concern about the precedent this sets. For one thing, just because a applicant concedes during a hearing that they accept a condition doesn't preclude them from appealing or having a takings claim. And I'm concerned about the precedent that we're setting where we're saying essentially we have data from a technical expert that says something is not warranted, but we're going to require you to do it anyway based on public testimony. Without having, the way the condition's worded right now does not even require that it be warranted based on this additional study, just that it not have some adverse impact.
Right.
So I share his concern.
I understand it, but I've seen that problem. Walmart's the great example, right?
Okay.
We now have crossing things there, and
So
those weren't warranted.
We need to ask the rest of the commission in favor of the condition or
I'm not.
Commissioner Kai? No. Commissioner Holm?
No.
I agree with our city attorney's evaluation.
I'm not in favor of it.
So as a commission, we will not add the additional condition and have the citizens, they will follow the process to go through city council.
And if I may,
and it's very difficult because you see something that you think is going to fix it, and you hope that this will facilitate change. But
and the issue is I believe it is correct not to place an unwarranted condition on an applicant to pay for. That doesn't mean that if problems arise or are identified, that through the CIP process or through the county road improvement process, that there might not be other mechanisms. And so certainly going to council, certainly a council member sat here through this whole conversation and is very much aware of it. It doesn't mean that there might not be solutions in the future. It just means that it's not the responsibility of the school district as the applicant.
Okay.
Yeah, I would suggest go to city council and see if they will ask that the city will pay for it to be done, because it is a pretty cheap solution. It's very cheap.
Work with the county on
Yeah,
that.
and work with the county. That works.
All right. So any other closing comments? All right. Then we will close the public hearing and move into deliberation.
I think we just did that.
We did deliberation all along, but I would need a motion and a recap of. I just want to make sure we are all on the same page regarding the final conditions of approval.
Can staff just tell us the ones that we've added, or you don't have to tell us the one we subtracted because we went through those just the ones that we added, so we're clear on those, and then we can vote on it probably.
What I have are the memo that was issued on June 5th. All those changes, the new one, all those changes are incorporated in this document and accepted by the applicant. And during our deliberation, we determined the 2 points of access.
We never finished.
We never finished deliberation, so we didn't finish that deliberation regarding the interpretation of the parking lot. So the question is, interpretation of the code. This is an industrial, or not industrial or commercial, it is institutional public. And the code talks to industrial, it says non-residential, and then it specifies commercial or industrial. And the heading says minimum standards for private on-site circulation improvements in non-residential developments. So it is referring to a development. So applicant's statement is that the development is the entire site and they have at least 2 driveways on their development. And versus the staff's potential interpretation that it would be per parking lot, not per development.
So you're asking us, Do we agree with the
Applicant?
applicant's interpretation or
The
staff's?
staff's interpretation.
I go with applicant's.
Commissioner Flores?
Applicant.
Applicant.
I would agree with applicant. However, I feel there's benefit to staff's interpretation, but I don't believe that that's what the code outlines.
I'm with the applicant.
All right. So would you provide revised findings based on our discussion and remove the condition B6? Yeah, and I agree, based on it is not commercial, it's not industrial, and it already has 5 driveways.
So we're saying
in the
the
development.
interpretation for our code is it's to the site
Site.
and not to the parking lot.
Correct. And the modification to 8F, removing Haiti Road as having a 12-foot wide.
Right.
Those are the only ones that I have that we've done for this evening.
And the temporary light that the city can yank that at its pleasure.
We needed some clarification from you on that one. We weren't exactly sure. We wrote the condition 16 different ways over here, and it looks strange to us every time.
So I don't know how we can condition the applicant to take an action that's required by the city. We can't do
No.
that.
We're not asking. I'm not saying that. But as a condition of this, it vests us because we didn't do that last time, and then the applicant actually came forward and threatened to sue the city if we took out their light.
That's not totally true, but I would.
What do you mean? That's Rob.
Okay, well, I would recommend that I don't think it's necessary, but totally understand it, because we have dealt with the Tarleton Sherwood Road and the theater, and that was complicated. So a general condition that just says something as simple as the light at Haiti is understood to be temporary until such time as a traffic signal on Handley is installed, at which point
The signal in Haiti will be
the signal
removed.
at Haiti will be removed, and Haiti will be a right in, right out. Period. So it's just acknowledging it so that anybody
That's all
in the
I want,
future,
is so we
yeah.
have something to point to.
So we're adding an A2 general condition regarding the temporary light at Haiti.
And maybe, and I'm sort of channeling the school district here. Maybe maybe we even specify that it's a county or city project or a public improvement
Right.
project, so that it's there
Not
isn't any
burdening
question in the future that they're on the hook for it.
Yeah, they're not on the hook for taking that light out. So we'll expect when it goes right in and right out, everybody will be using the roundabout to get the right.
No, they'll use Handley.
Or Handley.
Or Handley.
Yeah, the vision is that there'd be a light at Handley, and then Handley would connect to Haiti.
Hanley's going to basically do like a
crossover
Yeah.
and connect down.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, and there's one condition regarding the bicycle parking that I didn't get in here correctly. And the only reason I'm asking is because when you send me 85 pages in a couple of days and I have to read it all over again, I'd like to.
Well, I think we were going to remove.
You can scan it.
We're removing the variance. We're removing the variance.
We're declining the variance.
Or declining the variance.
And then you wrote a condition that says 80 parking spots.
Oh, the condition was that they will maintain the capability of putting in the total number, but at this time they'll only construct 80 to get.
And which number is that?
Was that H4?
We'd be replacing B3, and H4 would likely no longer be needed, or we would modify H4 to say 80 spaces, but it would be some combination of those two. We've got
So H3, I just need, like I said, you're gonna modify your findings and fix condition B3 to match the 80 spaces that will be constructed with the site reserving space for the total.
Correct.
And that was subject to an agreement
with
between the city and the school district about when that
The need.
phase-in would
Right.
take place.
Right.
And
when warranted.
And we trigger that. The city triggers the need for additional space.
And then H3
Be able to
is,
find that in the agreement.
In the
Yes.
agreement, yeah.
There was also C1 was proposed.
Struck
to be
C1.
Struck.
yeah.
And C2.
And C2.
And C2, but
Well,
that's already
C2
in
was
the
on,
memo.
Consistent
was
with the
part of
memo.
the memo.
H4.
H4, or, oh, by, there we go. There we go.
Just to summarize, my notes have us adding a general condition regarding the signal and it being removed and acknowledging that based on what we wrote. The variance bicycle parking variance is denied, but the conditions are amended such that they will only install 80 at occupancy. They'll have an agreement that says they'll do the more as needed, and they've provided space for 286, 268.
267.
The access interpretation,
668.
whatever the number is.
Okay, so it's B3 and then removing B6, yes.
I don't have that page in front of me, so I don't know.
Oh.
The access interpretation, you are citing with the applicant and not staff, so Matt is going to be modifying the findings and deleting the condition accordingly.
B6, correct.
Right. And, yeah, we already discussed striking C1, and then modifying the 80 12-foot sidewalk.
8.
Right, on H,
Right there.
yeah, on condition approval H8
F.
and F, we are going to delete the words hate road.
80.
That's it.
Yeah, just
80 road.
And just saying it's going to be built to Sherwood's local street standards or connector.
No, we don't have to.
We don't have to.
That's already another condition.
Because
that's already-
they're going to have to do that on autopilot anyway, but
That's-
this inclusion was misleading, so we're going to delete the inclusion.
And then we are adding an Exhibit H, which is the letter we received tonight, Exhibit O.
Yeah.
We have to accept Exhibit O as your June 5th memorandum and add it to the list.
So we just need a motion to accept the conditions as amended and modified?
Yeah, Vice Chair Flores has the official staff provided language, so we.
One extra item that I just noticed.
No, I'm just kidding.
H8 reads, prior to grant of occupancy, transportation mitigation projects identified. It has to be prior to acceptance of public improvements. Otherwise, they're going to build it after I've accepted it. It doesn't make sense. So,
It's not a chicken and egg, it's a.
in this case, it needs to be prior to acceptance of public improvements. The public
So-
improvements have to be constructed. All
So-
these mitigation
Has nothing to
projects.
do with occupancy, just the public improvements.
Public
So-
improvements.
H8 is changing to G8. No, we have a G5, a G6, and a G7 already previously, so H8 becomes H, or becomes G8.
Sorry about that.
H8, now G8. And we are going to push through for a vote tonight, so no.
Agree.
No one falls asleep between now and then. Super late. Commissioner Vice Chair Flores, are you prepared to do the? Okay.
What have you been doing over there?
He's writing the novel back down. It's
I'm assuming I'm not going to list everyone.
as just listed by staff. Welcome to the new commissioners for your first night.
Just reminded me, the first night on council, they were putting in the chemical plant on Twilight Shore Road, and we had, I think it was 2 or 3 meetings with everybody coming in worrying that we were going to intoxify everybody with the chemical plant.
This is the longest meeting we've had in really long.
We had one that ran pretty late a few months ago.
In a long time.
This is totally worth it because we got to get the school moving along.
We went past 11.
Oh.
In the old days, we go to 1 or 2.
Long time period.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
I stalled as long as I could. Are you ready?
All right, I'm ready.
All right.
Second.
There we go, we have it. All right, I move the Sherwood Planning Commission approve the application for SP 18-03, CUP 18-02, Variance 18-01 for Sherwood High School. Based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received in the analysis, findings and conditions in the staff report, and the amended modifications as just listed by the staff.
But prior to we getting a second, how do we do variance 1801 when we are accepting one and declining the other?
I think the proposed recommendation in the staff report navigates those waters. It
Yeah.
just says that
As long as it does.
Well, it was a recommendation for approval rather than.
One of the items listed by staff was to deny that variance.
Yeah.
So
That portion of the variance.
that portion of the variance, correct?
So you're approving the variance, but a portion of it is being.
It's removed.
and so our language is correct in this motion. Okay. So do we have a second?
Second.
No, they were denying the variance.
We denied one variance and approved one.
Oh.
I think the
yes.
problem was
Same number.
the variances don't have two different designations, which is probably
You're
something that
approving
should
the-
happen in the
Probably do
future.
A and B in the future,
Yeah.
or A, B, and C. So we can
What?
I think he has to use the word deny for that part of the variance.
That's what I'm thinking.
And deny that part of the variance.
There we go. Somebody seconded.
Related. Second.
All right, it's been seconded.
All right. Okay, it's been moved and second. I will recap it. It has been moved and seconded that we approve SP 1803, CUP 1802, Variance 1801B, and deny Variance 1801A.
With conditions of approval.
With the conditions approval as amended and listed by staff prior to this motion.
A was not the height.
Nope.
Okay.
The B was the height, A was the bike.
Okay. Okay.
All right. All right. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Do you guys recycle these?
Yes. If we leave them, they'll take them. So we have two announcements. One is that we need to pick up our planning commission packets tonight before we leave for our hearing next week, which will be at the police station at 7 p.m., correct?
Correct.
So take your packets before you go. And then Josh is here, so I'll just hit you afterwards about a concern I have regarding emails. So.
Come on, this isn't the Clinton problem.
It is not the Clinton problem. Are there any other commissioner announcements?
I would still like to do one.
Yes,
being
please.
it's still late.
Yes.
So the month of June is finally here, and that means the Sherwood Foundation for the Arts musical is finally going to be here at the end of the month. So I urge you guys all to go to our website immediately because we have pre-sale tickets that are lower. So the tickets will be going up on the 15th this month. If you need a link to the website, I have a business card here with all the information. Please support the arts here in Sherwood and keep it here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have something as well.
All right, we have one more announcement.
Sorry.
If we could have the audience withhold talking for just a couple of more moments, please.
Thank you. So this is kind of dated, but we haven't met in a while. But back in some of our previous deliberations earlier this year, there was a lot of talk about the housing needs analysis report that Eco Northwest generated for us, and after our deliberations on that and after the city council's deliberations on that, shortly thereafter on, I believe, April 29th, Echo Northwest published an opinion piece in the Oregonian that was concerning to me in that it was a very politically, I don't want to say biased, but politically motivated opinion piece. And it concerns me that we are using a company who is purporting to provide us with neutral, data-based facts for making decisions that at the same time is pushing an obvious agenda publicly. And so I just want to make that known that I have that concern and hope that staff and council and everyone else looks at that going forward in the future. Thank you.
Can I make a quick comment on that?
Yes.
So contractors with public employers or with public entities still have First Amendment rights to make political speech. And there have been a number of cases, including one, I believe, is at the U.S. Supreme Court, saying that we cannot retaliate against a contractor based on that political speech. So based on the fact that they wrote an op-ed, a number of the principals wrote an op-ed in the Oregonian, we can't take that into consideration when deciding whether or not to contract with them.
But we can consider contracting with other entities that provide similar services.
It just cannot be based whatsoever on
Sure, I'm not suggesting it should be. I'm just registering
It does
a
cast
concern.
doubt on our
On their-
ability to say this is non-biased information when everything you're saying publicly is very biased.
I don't disagree with that, but that's what the Supreme Court has told us. We can't even take that into consideration.
Yeah, it's Supreme Court. All right.
Yet my back is killing me.
Yeah, any other announcements?
I move we
All right.
adjourn.
We are adjourned.